Convene the Single Family Design Board for August 24th, 2022. May I have roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Here?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Here.
Board Member Anderson,
Here.
Board Member Arkelian,
Here.
and Board Member Klein will be in later. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item A, public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within its jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for a public discussion. Do we have anyone that'd like to speak?
Hi, Chair Miller and board members.
Yeah.
We did receive two general public comment written correspondence that was distributed prior to the hearing. Looks like number one was from Ruth Johnson. And two was a Michael Marzoya. Yes. And that concludes general public comment.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the approval of the minutes for the Single Family Design Board meeting for October 10th, 2022. Can we go through those items, please?
Yes. Item one was the Brown Act training and discussion that was held. 1322 Dover Road was continued indefinitely to the full board with comments. 3939 Carrillo Road was continued indefinitely to consent conceptual review with comments. Item 42108 Gibraltar Road was continued indefinitely to consent review with comments. Item 53208 Laurel Canyon Road was continued indefinitely to the full board with comments. That concludes the meeting minutes.
All right, hearing no discussion or comments, may I have a motion for approval, please?
I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Arkelian,
Yes.
and Chair Miller,
Yes.
and Board Member Johnson. I'm sorry,
Anderson.
Sorry. Okay, we have approval on that item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to the consent calendar for October 17th. Can we go through those items, please?
Yes. Item A, 1239 East Coda Street. Received final approval with comments. Item B, 1241 East Coda Street. Received final approval with the comment that the project plans demonstrate substantial conformance to the plans that received project design approval on December 20, 2021. Item C, 520 La Marina Drive. Received final approval. Item D, 140 Camino Alto Road. Received review after final with a comment. That concludes the meeting minutes.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion for approval?
I have a question, a point of order.
Sure.
I have an economic conflict of interest with items A and B, and so I don't know if I can vote on ratification of the meeting minutes.
So we just need Klein. Oh, she's not here. I don't think it's an issue. We just need acceptance by 2 members. Right?
So I'm going to recuse myself from that then.
Okay, so,
I'll move.
okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Can I have a roll call, please?
Okay, here we go. Okay. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kalas,
Abstains?
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Kelly.
Yes.
Yeah, the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to consent minutes for October 24th, 2022. Can we go through those items, please?
Yes. Item A, 1859 Eucalyptus Hill Road was continued indefinitely with comments. Item B, 1626 Mira Mesa Drive received project design approval and final approval with the required findings. That concludes the meeting minutes.
Okay, hearing no comments or changes, may I have a motion for approval, please?
I just have one comment.
Sure.
Sorry.
No problem.
On item A, it says continue indefinitely to with comments. It's just continued indefinitely back to consent.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, did I have an emotion for approval? I can't remember now.
I'll also move.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, can I have a roll call, please?
Okay. Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kalas.
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Akili.
Yes.
Yes, we have a motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to item D, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals. Do we have anything like that?
Yes, Chair
Okay.
Miller. Okay, some good news. We are scheduling an additional special hearing for the Single Family Design Review Board, full board. Thank you to the board members for volunteering their time. It will be Wednesday, November 30th, beginning at 3 p.m. So we'll start to pull things together for that agenda. The advisory board recruitment closed, and there will be interviews scheduled the first half of November. The appointments are December 6th, so we'll see how that goes.
Do we know how many applicants we received?
We don't know. We have inquired with the city clerk, but it's still in process. And then lastly, so you guys are aware that our SFDB, Single Family Design Review Board, proposed quorum and membership changes that have gone through the city's ordinance committee, and now tomorrow they will be heard at the city council. So the agenda packet was distributed through email, I believe, last week. It's item number 13. The meeting starts at 2. You can tune in on Zoom or in person, and we'll report back on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank you. Okay, I don't believe we have any subcommittee reports at this time. So we will move on to our first item, 2501 Medcalf Road. This is a continued item for concept review. If anyone's here to represent product, please come forward. This is a proposal to demolish the existing 970 square foot residence and 230 square foot garage and construct a two-story, 3,970 square foot single-unit residence, a 478 square foot below-grade basement, and a 586 square foot garage attached to the residence by a breezeway. The project also includes an on-site guest parking space and a pool spa. 2 oak trees are being removed and 3 36-inch boxed oak tree replacements are proposed. The proposed total of 4,556 square feet on a 24,580 square foot lot is 96% of the maximum guideline Florida lot area ratio. The project site is located in the Hillside Design District and the appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. Planning Commission review and approval of the coastal development permit is required. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings, Hillside Design District, and slope lot findings and grading findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. Project was last reviewed on September 26, 2022. Do we have minutes to read into the record? Hello.
Okay, previous meeting minutes here. Number 1, the board appreciates the information provided by the applicant to evaluate the project relative to the surrounding neighborhood. The board appreciates the reduction in the floor to lot area ratio. The board appreciates the proposed color palette and requests a physical sample of the proposed exterior residence color. The board supports the octagon element of the project. Return with improved articulation in the drawings to better reflect the proposed colors, materials, finishes, and detailing. Study the massing of the proposed second story, particularly along the north elevation from street view, in order to minimize or break up this element slightly. Study the second story window glazing on the north elevation. 8, the board further clarified that the success of the project depends on the detailing and historic references incorporated into the detailing of the project. 9, provide landscape screening on the south side of the property.
Great. And if you'd just like to go through how you address those items, whether you, how you approach that, and, you know,
Great, good,
that'd be
good.
great.
Before Will gets started,
Yeah, hi.
Trish Allen with SEPS.
Hi, Trish.
We have, of course, a brief presentation because there are only a few comments to respond to, so I'm
Okay.
sure you'll be happy with that for
Sure.
item one. If I may reserve just a couple of minutes in case I have some responses to your questions and comments, that would be great. Appreciate it.
Okay.
And to Will.
Okay, great. Well, before we get into the actual comments, I'd like to address the straw vote that was taken at the previous
We
meeting.
have 15 minutes too, by the way, just to
FAR.
keep your pint tongue.
Okay, I'll make it as quick as possible. So considering the tied straw vote regarding the FAR, we took a really good look
Okay.
at how to reduce the square footage and reduce that FAR, and we got it down to 96% from 99. So we did that by looking at various places in the plan, by really tightening it, but most notably the stair. We really looked at the stair and tightened that up a lot. And I think you'll see in plan, there were other benefits in doing that. And I'm going to the second floor plan. So in reducing the square footage of the stair, which is located right here with this window that has been discussed previously, we were able to push this wall back 2 feet, a little over 2 feet. And that actually had a lot of benefit for a number of other elements to the building. Namely, we were able to finish this lower veranda roof with a simple hip back into the west side of the entry, which is a much cleaner detail. Also, by pushing the wall back 2 feet, we're playing down that stair window. It's not as predominant on the elevation, and giving the entry, which is right here, the real focus of the design. Also, by pushing this back, we picked up square footage in front. We picked up area in front of the window for added landscaping as needed. So it was a win-win for both the FAR and the design of the building. So to get into the comments, we added a sheet with historical reference photos, also with detailing, because we felt that that was a very important part of the comments and also this building. So the first photo here is a picture of the mesa from the mid-1800s, showing what it was like before the tracks went in, and farmhouse with mature landscaping nestled into the landscape. This is the direction that we see the building. That's the feeling that we're hoping we intend for. Right. Here are additional buildings throughout Santa Barbara, farmhouse-style buildings with horizontal siding and just the verandas and the feeling that we're intending for this project. Also details, historic details, very simple window casing sample here. It's hard to see, it takes a little time for me to zoom in here, but there's a very simple trim bead at the head. Here, this is an exterior casing of a window. You can see that bead. And this is an actual photo of a very similar window, and that is reflective of what we intend for the detailing. Very simple, very elegant, but not overly, not a lot of motion to the detail, not a lot of filigree, very simple. We've also added a detail for the veranda, the covered verandas, showing how the soffit may work. Also, an opportunity to add this simple bead detailing at the capital of all the columns. So this simple, elegant detail will ripple through. The siding we discussed last time was on T&G with a V group. Yep. I have a sample, and it actually got a little dinged up, but
Yeah.
But that is the color, and while you look at that, I can go to the updated sample board, and that is Dunn Edwards Antique White. And we haven't seen the color of the building and the elevations on the screen yet, but I think it's trying to reflect that beigey color, which you can see against the the white of the paper really kicks out a lot. So antique white, we have a dark gray roof, a dark oil rub bronze doors and windows. We have a sample of the stone for the chimney and also the hardscape and a lighting sample. Additionally, there was a comment about studying the second floor and per the guidelines and having that respond in a stepping sort of way. And so I'd like to point out a couple things that maybe weren't apparent in the previous design. I think namely this wing, the east wing was looked at in the last meeting, and I'd like to just bring your attention to this second floor is pushed back 2.5 feet from this first floor. We broke the ridge and brought the ridge down 2.5 feet from the primary ridge of the house. We also employed a simple bay window to accentuate the stepping effect that will reflect what's happening at the garage. And then lastly, we kept the veranda wrapping around the building to provide the additional stepping. On the west side, I think we talked about it in the last meeting, but we reduced the plate height of this wing by approximately 1.5 feet and added a shed dormer on the other side of this gable. I think you can see it peeking through this elevation. And with the landscape plan, we added a pittosporum hedge to the south property line. And that concludes my response.
All right, great.
Great.
Did you have something you wanted to say?
I just wanted to, not yet. Maybe later.
Okay.
Reserve time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any public comment?
Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen? Thank you.
Can we stop the timer?
Oh,
Okay,
So that's
sorry.
it.
Ta-da. That's close enough.
Okay. If you are attending on Zoom and you would like to make oral public comment on this item, please select the raise your hand icon. When staff calls on you, please unmute yourself. And while we're waiting for those on Zoom, I will turn to the written correspondence. So Chair Miller, board members, we did receive one written correspondence that was distributed prior from the Anne Bronstein. Okay. Ms. Gu, do you see any hands raised on Zoom?
No, we do not have any public comment raised hands at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any of those in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Please fill out a speaker slip and approach the podium. You'd have 2 minutes to speak. Seeing none, we will close public comment and back to you, Chair Miller.
All right, thank you very much. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Kloss, do you have any questions, please?
I'd just like to take a look at the revised exterior elevations a little bit more closely. I'm looking at the street elevation. I think it's the north elevation there.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So were there any changes made to the window element at the stairwell?
Not in elevation, but it was pushed back
Right.
significantly.
Okay. Right. And you said that presented an opportunity for additional landscaping, so could you maybe show us that in plan, please?
Sure. In this location.
Okay. So you don't have a landscape plan, so to speak? Or I'm just wondering what the, what the landscape elements that are planned for that area are, and in terms of a sense of the scale or the height of those elements.
Oh, okay, the scale or the height. Well, it is interesting, we added on the cover elevation perspective street study, we added more appropriate landscaping with the olive trees that are masking the guest parking. They're much larger than before, and I think more realistic of what they'll look like. These could even be even taller. in real life. And then this is the London plane tree that's proposed as well. And if need be, we could add another tree in front of the stairwell.
Okay, so do you have a landscape plan that shows the species on it?
The added tree in front of the stairwell?
I'm just looking for whatever you have there currently in that location.
Okay. Okay, so these are all olive trees. The view was from here,
Sure.
looking back. And olive trees. The London plane tree that was in perspective. This was the existing tree at the corner of the building, and oaks along Medcliff. These two trees are two new jacarandas, and sycamores on the private drive and towards the back.
Okay, so the green pochette that is, I have to apologize. I went to the eye doctor earlier today, so my eyes are not 100% today. So I can't read the number that's to the left of the veranda at the entrance.
This,
Yes, I'm trying to understand what that is
absolutely.
keying in terms of planting material.
And that, so 6 is turf and 8 is, I believe, low planting.
Shrub planting. Okay,
Right, shrub,
okay. If we can just go back to the front elevation one last time, please.
sure. Trying to center, right?
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, those are my only questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Yes, so you said that you went from a 99 to a 96% FAR. What square footage reduction does that equate to?
140 square feet.
And the overall is 5 or 8
I
or?
would have to look again, but I think it's 4,556.
Yes.
Yeah.
4,556.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Arkalian, do you have any questions, please?
Just one. Can we go to sheet A4, please?
Sure.
Page 15 of the PDF. Yeah. So you brought up, I believe, view 1 in your presentation about the second story, and you appreciate the clarity there. But was there anything that changed in that second story element since the last presentation?
No.
Or the one before it?
Since the first to the second, the west wing was dropped, the plate was dropped a foot and a half, I believe, and we
Okay.
added a shed dormer to pick up the head height.
Got it. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Do you have photos of the surrounding neighborhood? I just need to review
Sure.
that real quick. Uh-oh, our screens went black. Our local one, not that one.
Okay. So our site is here, Medcliff. And I think this is a good a good time to see how large a half-acre site is in context of Medcliff with the smaller typical Mesa parcel.
You own the property in the back there? It's like you've got an interior lot there.
Yes, yes, our clients own this as well.
That's my only question, so I'll bring it back for comments. Vice Chair Colossus, do you have any comments, please?
Sorry for the interruption.
We're having technical issues here.
Is it, so are they fixed now? Do you see?
That one went on. Ours didn't.
Try the red plug, because that's the one that went on this. Just really make sure it's green. Now you come up. Is the light off, the green light on?
No switch to turn?
It's just a press.
Ah, I-
Great.
All right, so which one should I kick when I sit back down? No, I wonder, there's so much stuff going on
know.
over here. I'm like, I hope I didn't
There's spaghetti down there.
knock anything out.
Okay. You're up for comments.
I think the project is really lovely. I don't have any misgivings about, need to be careful about how I say this. I have no misgivings about the design. You've done a lovely job. I understand that this is, we're above square footage here, and so we have a lot of latitude relative to the parcel size. I can understand the concern of neighbors relative to the size of the home. And I think that's what I'm struggling with most. But I do recall the conversation in the last meeting, which was if this can successfully be built as though it was the original farmhouse, it could work. And I think you've helped to assuage some concerns on my part in regards to that, with the aid of the details that you've illustrated to give us a sense of direction that you'd be taking. I'm also noting here that this project is going to have to go to Planning Commission for review and approval of a coastal development permit. So I'm aware that there's a higher level of review associated with the project, which is an opportunity for additional public input should there be concerns by neighbors. So given all of those factors, I think I'm comfortable with the project as it stands. I would have liked to have seen a little bit darker of a color on the exterior body. But color's a funny thing, and it may look a lot darker when we get a lot of that on the walls anyhow. So I think it's a period appropriate color that you've selected, and I appreciate the fact that it's not a start white. So those are my only comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
Yes. Thank you for the reduction in the square footage of 140 square feet. I don't feel like that's significant enough. I feel the scale with the neighborhood, I drove by again, I live in the area, is just, seems too large of a building for the adjacent neighborhood. So I would like to see a larger reduction in footage. And there's many ways to reduce scale of building. You know, you've done the 2-foot pushback and the 2'6" drop in ridge, but I don't see that as enough of a reduction for scale. The wraparound porches help really in that farmhouse design to reduce scale as well. And, you know, the second story window has always been a challenge for me. I don't really feel like that fits with the historical farmhouse. I know it's more of a modern thing, but I would love to see a header at least broken up in between floors. And yeah, I mean, we talked about things last review that could help with that two-story stair window. Yeah, and the color, white, for me, I was liking the last submittal where it was a little darker, just due to that neighborhood, in the coming in on that street. Dark colors recede. White, bright, projects at you. So, the scale of the house, it's already very large, is going to come off even larger with that brighter white. So, yeah, I would love to see, more of the off-white you had last presentation. What else? I guess that's it for me. Thank you. I mean,
right.
it's a beautiful project, too. I mean, it's definitely going to enhance the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, Board Member Art Killing, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So, yeah, in support of the other board members, I believe quality architectural materials are being used. The landscape plantings along the sides of the property provide adequate screening. Believe they're aesthetically appropriate. Believe the antique white is a step in the right direction. In terms of the architectural style, I appreciate the historic perspectives and the imagery there. And I feel like you definitely spoke to the style, and I don't want to undermine your architectural ability in saying this, but I feel like it's really well done in terms of fitting with the style. But I did drive by the property. I did an overlay between the previous plan set and this one. I've spent more time going through our guidelines and the FAR study. I really appreciate you doing the immediate neighborhood and the other properties as well. So it's a lot of information, but unfortunately, I do not find it supportable given the FAR. I believe more drastic reductions need to be made in order for it to be woven better with the other properties in the neighborhood. I believe the style is very well done, and I feel like you can keep running along this style. But if I were to just see this building, in particularly the second story element, I'm reviewing. I've reviewed 39 TS to 43 TS of our guidelines, and it just doesn't. This property and how the second story is expressed, despite how you've been stepping down the east side and trying to make it work with the garage, I do not believe it kind of fits with how the other second stories in the immediate neighborhood, how those are going. I appreciate you considering the stairwell, but I really need a more drastic reduction of FAR for me to be on board in terms of the immediate neighborhood. And it's out of my purview to speak upon properties that have gone beyond the 85%. It may have been beyond before our guidelines were established, but I'm very focused on how our guidelines are right now. And after reviewing it, this is kind of like what I'm the most comfortable with in stating. So that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Could you bring up your photographs of the adjacent homes, please?
Sure.
So, how would I say this? I'm extremely comfortable with the way the house is. I'm extremely comfortable with the large FAR. And the reason I say that is there's not really an architecturally noteworthy home near you. They're all very eclectic. You know, it's kind of the information they have. I think, the reason I could say that is because I think the style of the home is quite wonderful, beautiful. It actually adds a lot of pizzazz to the neighborhood, which I think is missing. And I can understand why neighbors would resist that, because I think you're going to alter the signature of this neighborhood, because it'll look like an old stately farmhouse that was put there back in the turn of the last century. So that's my criteria for this. I always look at high FARs and size, bulk, and scale and compatibility of the neighborhood. And in this particular case, because you're making a strong statement about it, the historical style of it, I think it complements the neighborhood. I don't think it detracts from it. So I'm comfortable with the large FAR because it's also a very large property. You know, I study historical architecture, like so I'm very familiar with, and I don't know how many old neighborhoods you go in, and most old homes back in that time were boxes. You know, they were just very square boxes with doodads on it. Most of the old homes that we have in our neighborhoods were mail order homes, and I've even got books of the different catalogs, and it's just stupendous, the charming little houses you can order from a catalog, and they would send it down on the train and unload it, and you and your brother would go down and build the house. Anyway, be that as it may. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming with this. I notice the other board members are uncomfortable with a high FAR, but I'm not, so that's kind of where I'm kind of with our vice chair and her feelings about it as well. So there's kind of a different approach here with the different board members, so I'm not sure who wants to make a motion or how you want to.
Can I just add one comment that I
Absolutely.
missed? I would like to see more vertical elements associated with the two-story window. And I think that's out of deference to the neighbors, because I think there is an opportunity for that to create light pollution. And I think it would be reasonable for there to be, some sort of tree in that nook, so to speak, in order to help eliminate that
Agreed.
potential possibility.
Agreed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I
Sure,
take a
yes.
couple minutes before you make a motion?
Yes.
This is a little tough. I can appreciate where, each of you are coming from. I guess I'm really speaking to you two that are still struggling with a high FAR. And I think I just want to sort of make my comments, put them on the record as we do move this forward to Planning Commission, I hope. Maybe there needs to be a couple straw votes, because we definitely want the communication to the Planning Commission to be clear. And as Ms. Kloss mentions, there's another opportunity for public input. We'll have to put story poles up, and neighbors will come out. And, the Planning Commission will take a look at this. And really, and this is to previous single-family design boards. Previous single-family design board saw this lot, saw the subdivision, and reviewed this. Mr. Miller, you were probably here.
Probably.
I think it was, 12 years ago or so. And so for whatever reason, this is the lot layout that we have in front of us in terms of size. This lot size, half an acre, is much larger than anything else in the immediate surrounding area, and maybe even further. And so, interestingly though, it's relatively flat. A lot of these properties that have a larger lot size, subject to an FAR guideline, because they're more than 15,000 square feet in area, often are the bluff tops, or they have some slope to them. Don't ask me why this is in the Hillside Design District, because we don't have any slope really, it's negligible. And so for those, when we look at other lots and how those have been developed in the area, much of their lot area is the bluff face, not developable. And, I'm not lecturing you, I'm just really wanting to put our perspective into the record as we move forward, and I'll be explaining this to the Planning Commission. Will and I will be explaining this to the Planning Commission. But we have a usable area. The project was subject to conditions by the planning commission. Those conditions did require a building envelope. The applicant offered a 20-foot setback from the private driveway frontage. The code would have only required 6 feet from that. So I feel like a lot was done before we came on board to, and really will, to design this, to consider what fit in with the neighborhood. So we have a very large lot. Our FAR is near 100% of the maximum guideline. It's not going over, though. So we're kind of struggling with understanding why there's this much attention on the FAR, on that number, when other properties in the area, smaller lots where the FAR is a requirement, were supported by this board to go to the planning commission with an FAR modification, even like earlier this month. So anyway, we take all these things into consideration and really felt that at the last review it did, what I heard, what Will heard was that, you know, it's to the details to really bring that look, and I think the imagery really did help that, and we are looking forward to bringing it back here to this board after planning commission. Not to be presumptuous, we still have to go through that step so that you can dig into those details. And of course, our wish is to have full support from this board when you see that level of detail. So again, my speech wasn't about trying to change minds, but to ask you or the maker of the motion, if we can move this forward to the planning commission and with the ability to express differences of opinion in that motion, to move us forward.
And I think the other thing is important to underline is when you do go up into these higher levels of FAR, it's not necessarily a bad thing. What it means is it's a higher scrutiny of review, so that we make sure that the building that you're proposing does work with the neighborhood. And in my feeling, you do. And I think in our vice chair, you do. These others seem to feel not. So I'm not sure where to go with this.
You know, I think this project and what Ms. Allen just, the context that Ms. Allen just sort of presented, it begs a question in my mind that I've asked myself, not necessarily out loud on several occasions, relative to FAR and usable lot area. Because, you know, all of a sudden, you may have, you know, I'm looking at some of these parcels here, and what is this, 2515, for example. It's a very narrow lot right there on the bluffs at the end of that cul-de-sac.
2515.
Over half of that lot is unusable. It's all on the bluffs, and probably more of it is unusable based on setbacks to the bluffs. And so really what you start looking at, that FAR is deflated by the size of the lot, but if you look at it in terms of aggregate or net usable area, if the FAR were actually to be based upon that, it would be a completely different situation. And I think it, you know, it's a broader topic, perhaps to be considered at higher levels than this board, but I do think that you know, it's hard not to consider it in terms of what we have in front of us. And the other thing that I would note is that there's a lot more street frontage that this parcel has. So this could be just as large of a lot, but have much less street frontage and be a deep lot. And it would be developed very differently, and it would be viewed very differently from the street. It might not feel as massive from the street if it were a narrow, deep lot. There's a lot of lots that we're looking at like that, like along Shoreline, that are being developed, and they might not be perceived by the pedestrian as being a large home, but that's just simply a product of the fact that they're not as wide. And in this case, it's a very wide lot, and that's what's forcing the development in that pattern, in essence. And so I think it reads as being much larger than some of these other parcels that are deep. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm okay with it moving forward. That's just a point of discussion.
Well, just to add on to that if I can.
Sure.
I mean, FAR is always a consideration with neighborhood compatibility. I mean, the scale, right? I mean, so it always has to be viewed at with, does it fit in scale-wise with the neighborhood?
Yeah, I'm looking at the neighborhood. I think it fits. What do we do if we have a draw here?
So I just want to clarify, Ellen Kirkin, I'm the design review supervisor. I think I just want,
Katie's not here.
right, and that's okay. I think we can, I think the idea, if there's a split board, we just want to be really explicit in the motion, that, there's no action today, or there's no, you're submitting your comments
Oh, okay.
to the planning commission. So there's not, a decision does not have to be made, there's no decision at this board. So it's okay to send different types of comments to the planning commission for the land use approval. I just want to put in context that, and just as for the public record again, and I know that it's been discussed, it's in the project description, but this is an FAR guideline, the maximum FAR guideline, whereas other projects, just based on the size of the parcel, it's not a mandated, or it's not a requirement. So your guidelines, the single-family design guidelines describe that, and so this is part of the process, that, just a comment on that. And I know, again, that, I'm trying to think, this requires a coastal development permit, so that's really what that's what the Planning Commission is going to be deciding on, and it will come back to you for neighborhood compatibility findings and the project design approval. Again, where you're going to have to toil with this question, and hopefully we'll have Board Member Klein here as well to weigh in. And so I just, again, this is a guideline. It's okay to have different types of comments go, but I would just want for each, like if it's split 2-2, then please, whoever is commenting for, your side, be very explicit, and that will help the Planning Commission out in their review.
Vice Chair Colossus, would you be so interested in entertaining a motion and include both?
And pardon me, Mr. Chair, it looks like Ms. Brodesson
Oh,
has
please.
something to
Yeah.
say.
I don't know if this will be helpful or not, but I was the project planner when this large area was subdivided. So
Sure.
this was a much larger lot before. So as part of the subdivision, they did reduce the size of the lot. And when the SFDB back then in 2010 reviewed the subdivision, one of their concerns was knowing that this lot was eventually going to be resubmitted. Probably all these houses are. So I remember exactly the board member, Bernie Bernstein, requested that there would be larger setbacks than normally allowed in order to help mitigate the potential size of any future house.
Okay.
So that was part of the reason why they added that, the additional larger setbacks that would normally be required, just so that it would help to mitigate this.
So what you're saying is they've complied with those larger setbacks with this
Yes,
house?
and again, like
Got
Ms. Kokinda said, it is a guideline FAR on these
Exactly.
larger lots that are surrounded by much smaller lots. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yeah, so my guideline is if it's a big FAR, it better be nice architecture. And so that's why I feel you've done it, so that's where I'm coming from. So, would someone like to entertain a motion, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to make a motion. And so this will be, well, maybe let's talk this out for a second before I make a motion. So if I were, and this is really,
Well, you can include that there are two members of the board that feel that the FAR should be reduced, whereas two members feel that they're comfortable with the current. So you can actually include that.
okay, so I'll just take a stab at it and we can tweak this as we go. So I think the board is in agreement that the nature of the design and the proposed detailing is exemplary of great architecture, that we appreciate the more muted white that is being proposed in terms of the overall body of the home, but that some people would like to see additional depth in color. That the detailing presented is also evidentiary of, or reflective of true historical farmhouse architecture. We all recognize that this is a large lot, which creates an FAR guideline only as opposed to a required FAR. But half of the board, 2 of the members, are struggling with the size and massing of the home relative to adjacent properties.
Is that your motion? Do I have a second?
That's my motion.
Does
Chair
anyone-
Miller, Vice Chair Kalas, just to clarify, this is continuing indefinitely into the Planning Commission with comments? please?
Yes, that's correct.
Can I second the motion? Yes, I second it. Okay, let's get a roll call, please.
May I ask the maker of the motion to amend one of the items, or to consider amending one of the items? I noted 2 of the board members disagree with the size and the massing of the home relative to the adjacent properties. Would the maker of the motion consider, instead of adjacent properties, the immediate neighborhood?
Yes, yes, I'm fine with that change.
And, oh, and I wanted to ask if if you, before I approve, to restate what was proposed, for staff to restate it.
Okay. 1, the board agrees the nature of the design is exemplary of great architecture. 2, the board appreciates the muted white color on the body of the residence. However, some would like to see an additional depth in color. 3, the detailing presented reflects true historical architecture. 4, the board recognizes it's a large lot and is a guideline FAR, not a required FAR. However, 2 of the board members disagree with the size and massing compared to the immediate neighborhood. Okay.
That sounds right.
Thanks.
With 2 clarifications. In item 3, it should specifically refer to farmhouse architecture. And I think the way I stated the issue relative to the color was greater depth, not additional depth.
The second of the maker. Agree with that change?
You were the seconder?
I agree. Do you agree with yourself? I agree with myself. Wow. Somebody. Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Achillian,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
I do want to see a tree. I wasn't going to put that on the
Okay,
Yeah, it should be.
all right, let's move on to item number 2.
I don't really know how to amend.
Okay, cut. All right, moving on to item 2, 2339 Edgewater Way. This is a continued item. This is for concept review. The proposal to demolish the existing 1,976 square foot, two-story, single-unit residence, and the 200 square foot garage, and construct a new, 3,707 square foot, two-story, single-unit residence, and a detached accessory building comprised of a 499 square foot garage, a 478 square foot accessory dwelling unit above. Project includes a pool, patios, new pergola, driveway drainage, hardscape, and landscape improvements. Project will address violations outlined in ENF 2018-00339 by removing an unpermitted retaining wall and fill grading. The proposed total of 4,664 square feet on a 33,945 square foot lot is 96% of the maximum guideline for lot area ratio. Planning Commission review and approval is required for the coastal development permit. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings and hillside design district and slope lot findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. The project was last reviewed on August 15th, 2022. Can we go through the minutes and read them into the record, please?
And Chair Miller, I'll have to excuse myself for this item.
Okay. I hope we don't,
And
okay, good.
Pardon my interruption, if you could state for the record what the reasons are?
Economic conflict of interest.
Okay, oh, I got it. Okay, if you bring forward and go read
Okay.
the minutes, please.
Yes, number 1, the board appreciates the reduction in building height of approximately 3.5 feet. 2, for privacy reasons, the board requests removal of the deck off the master bath on the second floor on the easterly side of the primary residence. 3, the board has divergent opinions on the style of the residence and recommends a restudy of the nature of the roof lines and/or the style of the residence as it relates to the immediate neighboring parcels. The reason for divergence is due to the extent to which the residence is visible both from the street and from the neighboring properties. 4, restudy the amount of proposed Corten steel material. 5, provide adequate screening along the westerly property line as it relates to the deck on the accessory dwelling unit ADU or remove the deck. 6, the board appreciates the sustainability elements and the effort put forth in that investment. 7, the board encourages and requests that the owners of the subject parcel and adjacent owners of 2327 Edgewater Way communicate regarding the project with or without the applicants. 8, in general, the board supports the proposed floor-to-lot area. However, study to reduce the FAR of the primary residence to help reduce the overall site FAR to be closer to 85% of the maximum guideline.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to introduce yourselves and present, and, go through the minutes and kind of how you addressed them.
Great. Thank you, Chair Miller.
Yeah.
There we go. Now it's on. I'm Liz Hughes, presenting for Tom Oxner Architect, and the owner, Kurt and Kim Custard.
And I'm Jarrett Gorin, Vanguard Planning, also presenting for Kurt and
Okay.
Kim Custard.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Do we have, oh, there's the old plans. I see that. Okay. So I'll just go over quickly, before I run through the minutes, just in general, some of the changes that we've made since the previous review. We really went back and studied the massing of the building, primarily just in discussions with the neighbor and trying to be more sensitive about the treatment along that easterly property line. And we think that it's resulted in some benefits to the project. So I'm just going to kind of skip ahead a little bit here. So I'm going to go first to the second floor plan, which is primarily where the changes were made. And what we tried to do here was pull that second story mass further from the property line to kind of give a little bit more relief there, and also and our landscape architect is on the way, but he's not here right now. He'll at least, he'll be here. To kind of allow for some larger canopy trees along this edge to provide more screening. Because I know one of the issues was, with one of the aerial photos, there's another property that's close to this that has been recently constructed that is a different architectural style. And even though the space between the two properties is pretty substantial, it's about 40 feet wide, there's currently no landscaping there. So it looks like this big kind of hole between the two projects. And we feel like, you know, pulling the building further from that property line, softening it with some landscaping will help to kind of mitigate the contrast maybe that some might see between those two properties. So this here, and then also, if you remember, we had a small deck off of this side of the corner, which was actually even closer, which has also been removed. So removing that, and now this deck is a substantial amount distance from that property line, so allowing for more privacy for the residents. And then I think the elevations here, you can kind of see that step along this edge. And then here as well, I think that has been a really good change, and we like how that's looking on this, primarily on this elevation. Another one of the things that changed was we kind of had some, I'm not going to call it a tower element, but it was kind of a two-story volume that extruded upward on this corner, which had the Core 10 steel, which has also been removed to kind of allow for some lower one-story elements along that side. And then the Core 10, which we're proposing to replace with, you know, a similar colored stone, has been kind of moved farther into the property, so less visible from the neighbor's property as well. And then I'm just going to talk statistically about a few things that we've changed. We lowered the height another 1.5 feet. So overall, since the first, this is our third conceptual review here, and we're hoping to get positive comments to move this project forward to Planning Commission. So since the first review, we've lowered the height of the building 4'6". Although we are trying to maintain an 11-foot plate height still at the first floor. And the reason, you know, in this area, we typically don't request plate heights of that dimension. However, because this property is so far from the street and less visible, we've also pulled it away from the bluff line to kind of allow for some visibility through the project for the neighbor. So we felt that the height impacts here would allow us to kind of do something that we don't normally do elsewhere on the mesa. 4'6" total height reduction since the first time. The square footage, we reduced of the main house, 128 square feet total. And primarily in this design, it's coming from that upper level, you know, to bring down that massing and pull it away from the property line. Then the FAR for the main house, we were kind of looking at a comparison with the neighbor's property. And so since they don't have an ADU, we were kind of looking at just the FAR for the main house and garage, just as a comparative. So originally we were at 90%, and we've brought it down to 87% now. For the site, it was 99%, and now it's 96%, including that ADU. So we'll go back to the meeting minutes and let's see. Go through that. So the building height we talked about. So the privacy, the removal of the deck, which we removed already. The style of the residence, Jarrett is going to kind of come back to this a little bit, but I think our main justification for having the style of the residence be, you know, a more modern style is that it is a less visible property from the street. This is a style of architecture that the owner feels very strongly about, being their kind of their dream home here. So we're doing as much as we can to make adjustments to the massing and the location on the property to be as sensitive as we can about the site conditions while still maintaining this style that we're trying to achieve for the owner. And Jarrett's also going to kind of go through another justification, a comparative study in the neighborhood. And I think, for other projects, particularly on the Mesa, we have gotten a few approved that were a modern style also, also similar, having maybe an older home next to them or another home that is not of the same style. So we know that it's possible. We're just hoping that there's something we can do here as well to make that happen. So the style Jarrett will go over later. The amount of Corten steel has been reduced. Actually, we've changed this to like a reddish tile here that's instead of the Corten, but it's also limited in its area. The front elevation has been redesigned a little bit. We added some wood elements along the front and wood here. So if you remember the first presentation, we had a lot of the charred wood siding. So I think what we've been trying to do with the materials overall is just bring a softer, more residential feel to the design, be very sensitive about integrating with the landscape and, providing a nice design that works with this property and enhances the natural character of the site. Let's see. The screening along the westerly property line. Okay, so this is about the ADU deck, which is close to the westerly neighbor's property line here. I'm gonna kind of zoom in. So we provided a wood privacy screen along that side for now. And Jarrett also, did you bring that image? We also have an aerial photo that we took out on the site to take a look at.
Yeah, and I think if they got questions, we can go over the.
Yeah.
We can do it then.
Is the
But I'll hand
timer
these out in
working?
the meantime.
Okay, I don't want to take up all the time. Okay, so there is some substantial landscaping along that, but even though there is landscaping on the neighbor's property, we wanted to make sure that there was adequate privacy along that side, so we added the screen there.
And if we could ask City TV to zoom in on that one more time, to switch over to it, the image. If I could ask City TV to zoom in on that image one more time. I don't know if, I think we had it initially, we accidentally switched it on you. Well, keep going, I would just,
Okay.
you can keep
Yeah,
going, we can
so,
pass it out.
The sustainability elements, I just wanted to reiterate the reason why we opted for a flat roof here is because of the amount of solar panels and hydronic heating that we're trying to provide for this property. So we've met with a solar consultant about the amount of panels that we need, and we were told it's about 1,800 square feet, not including kind of access aisles. And right now, our roof is basically right at that number. We have about 2,200 square feet total roof area, so that allows for, the 1,800 plus a little extra for them to access the panels. So just demonstrated that quickly on the plans where that, and then I was told that primarily the hydronic was gonna go on the main house, and then the solar, for the most part, is gonna go on the garage ADU so that it can connect to the power walls. And then I'll let Jarrett talk a little bit about communication with the neighbor, because he's been handling that.
Yeah, so we've been in touch with our next door neighbors, the Hacks, quite a bit. We may have mentioned this last time, but we're processing a lot line adjustment with them. So I met with Carol Hack over at her house to go over the lot line map, and we've talked quite a bit about that. When I was there, it's the first time I'd been on her property, so I asked her to show me around and, show her our property from the perspective of her property, and told me what their concerns were. And a lot of them had to do with the straight up and down two-story mass, which we now got rid of. And then just kind of what kind of landscaping we're putting in. And she has issues with getting a fence up because people are apparently trespassing on her property using our driveway. But I'm not going to speak for Carol and say she's 100% satisfied with things. She could say that herself if she wants to. But we have been in contact with her and talked about the project. And as soon as we had these plans submitted, I reached out to her to review them with her. And I finally heard back from her today that they're in Europe. So, but she said she is excited to see the changes we made. So I'll meet with her when they get back and walk through all this stuff. But we've been in a lot of contact with them.
And I'm going to switch over to the landscape so that Rob can go over the changes. Since we did move the footprint of the building slightly, a lot of the elements have shifted around, but I think we'll focus kind of on what's happening along Carol's property, because that was the main area that we wanted to develop for this review.
So you folks did look at the landscape plan the first time, and there's not a lot of difference into what was presented the first time and that the board seemed to be on board with at that point. I have added additional vertical screen trees along that property line with the hacks. But the rest of the hardscape, what was designed originally where the hardscape kind of is meant to kind of bleed out from the architecture and kind of blend into the landscape is still there. The lounge area on the west end of the property has been kind of modified a little bit, but that was modified to deal with some setback lines. But mostly we just added a little more landscaping along the east property line to create some screening between the two properties. So if I'll answer any questions if you have any more thoughts from there.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Does that conclude your presentation?
So I had some information on, a nearby contemporary home that this board approved and made findings for unanimously, and what was around it. But I don't really feel like I need to go over it unless you specifically want to hear about it. I could just leave it be. Okay, great.
Presentation was pretty good, so. Okay, so bring it back to public comment.
Thank you. Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen? Thank you. Okay. If you're attending on Zoom and wish to make oral public comment on this item, please select the raise your hand icon, and when staff calls on you, please unmute yourself. And in the meantime, we'll switch to our written correspondence. So Chair Miller, board members, we did receive one written correspondence from Carol and Alex Hack. It was distributed prior to the hearing. Ms. Gu, do you see any raised hands for this item on Zoom?
At this time, there are no raised hands on Zoom. Thank you.
Okay, and if anyone in the audience wishes to make public comment on this item, please fill out a speaker slip located next to the door, bring it up to us, and you would have 2 minutes to speak at the podium. Seeing none, we will close public comment and back to you, Chair Miller.
I'm puzzled, sir. What? Okay. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. All right, Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any questions, please?
Yes, I have only one or two. You had said that you were foregoing the Cortan in favor of a tile type of siding.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like a reddish slate that's kind of in a similar format to originally we had the Corten in panels, and it would be a similar tiled type of application.
Okay, you don't have any image of that?
I do, actually. I do have it on it shows up a little dark on the material board, but I have it. Okay, this right here, if you can see that.
Okay. Okay. And the only other question I have is on the easterly property line where you've added the landscaping. Could you just articulate for us exactly what you've added and the nature of that planting?
Thank you. Can we go back to that? So I have Prunus lyonii as a vertical, or Carolina cherry as the two options on there. And so there's the bamboo that's shown there, and there's that particular Prunus linei or Carolina cherry is the choice there. And I believe I added 2 more Prunus caroliniana because it was pretty well kind of planted originally. And so the good part about the way the house is shifted, and I have more room to plant there, so it's far more kind of ample. But when I started to add more plants there, it was, I had kind of filled it in pretty well the first time. So I can't specifically point to which ones, if that's.
Okay, and then down east of the pool area, is that, can you just tell us what these plantings
So
are that
that's,
are
so,
proposed there?
yeah, so that's basically, there's a screen wall along there, but to kind of supplement the screen wall between the two properties is the bamboo, and then there's also a hedge form that's on there. It's a Pisborum hedge, and that runs the whole east property line. And in fact, I didn't mention that the first time, but that's been there. And then right as you come to kind of the ocean side of it, the planting drops down to like a multi-trunk Melaleuca, and it's again at that point it starts to bleed into more of the bluff planting. So.
Okay. Those were my only questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Yeah, Holly, I reviewed the minutes, but finding the video I couldn't find it. So am I able to ask questions but not comment?
Chair Miller, through you to Board Member Anderson, have you reviewed the previous drawings? And so you reviewed the previous drawings, correct?
And minutes. Yeah.
So, Chair Miller, through you, procedurally, you would need to review all the items in the record. So it would be the video and, yeah, and
Like
so
that
I
would
think
take
that
hours.
from a participation standpoint, you can, this is only for concept review. So in terms of, I could make a quick phone call and check on this for verification, but I think that it could just be that you could ask questions at this point, but maybe not comment. But I will be right back.
Okay, sounds good.
So my questions are on the 2-story ADU out front. Just maybe you can show again the site plan and go over the thinking around how that 2-story fits in with the neighborhood scale-wise.
Sure.
And what were the violations?
So before you, can she make comments about the ADU, or is that off the board?
Chair Miller, yeah, you're able to make questions about the accessory dwelling unit.
I'm like overall legally, I mean, the board can't, okay.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, got it, okay.
Let me start with the violations first, because that's pretty simple. So the previous owner of the project here, actually how I got involved with the project is the previous property owner, when he bought the house, came in and decided to, without permits, build like a retaining wall out of railroad planks and ties all the way along the top of the bluff, and then filled it all in with dirt behind it and built up a lawn. So when we met with him, we told him, you can't have that there. Like, there's no way to get that approved. So that's the violation. And originally we started off just abating that violation with a new grading and remediation plan, which this whole project implements. So this project would abate that violation.
Thank you.
And then to address the question about the ADU, so in terms of our site design, because this is, the entry to the property is a long, narrow entry, what we didn't want to have happen was you pull into this driveway, you drive down, and you're just staring at a garage. So in order to create this more meandering pathway, we made this narrow tandem, I mean, it's not really a tandem garage because you can enter on both sides, but a narrow garage that we could locate off to the side and kind of experience as you come past. And then the ADU on the second floor was just kind of, we felt that it's still not a very tall building, so I'm gonna go to the elevations real quick. And it's also pulled actually pretty far from the street here as well. So, let's see, so here's the ADU here. And we tried to keep that height down as much as we could. So even to the top of this architectural feature, it's 23.3, so the top of that parapet is about 22 feet. So kind of a smaller size second story here, also narrow to the street, so you're not really getting that much impact, and also pulled back as far as we could to minimize that, as well as, and here are some 3D views, which I think would be helpful. This is kind of what you'll see from the street, you know, some layering of landscaping. These are the trees on the adjacent property, which are pretty dense right now, so that's what you're seeing there. And then, you know, some trees that happen in front of that ADU. So we have room for this planter with a smaller tree here, and then there's also some trees out in front that are creating some of that landscaping screening so that it reduces, you know, the visual impacts of that building on the street.
So the ADU sits behind that gate. Okay, and this building that exists, it's way further back from that. I mean, is this the existing garage that's at the front, or is that on it? Yeah.
That's the existing garage, and the ADU would be back around, you see where yeah, it's right about there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Board Member Klein, or Kalian, do you have any Board Member Klein, do you have any questions, please?
No questions.
I have no questions, so I'll move on to comments. Vice Chair Colossus, do you have any comments, please?
I don't. I think the adjustments to the floor plan and the removal of the deck have all been positive, and I'm looking at the concerns of the neighbor relative to heights and the comments that they've made as to what they were required to keep their construction at, and I think you're right in the ballpark of that, so I think it's consistent with heights. Those are my only comments. I think we have adequate screening. I'm pleased with the changes. Thank you.
Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
Pardon my interruption. We did hear back, and unfortunately, Board Member Anderson can only question on this item. In the future, you know, we'll make sure you're able to have access to any videos, and we can help you out with that. Thank you.
Who should she email to get that help?
Yeah, I'm happy to provide any videos you may need.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
Just that I agree with Vice Chair Colossus. I think that there's appropriate screening along the property lines and the adjustments are acceptable. I know this is further down the road, more of details, but I liked the Core 10 better.
Yeah, I think you've satisfied all our concerns. The only thing I would suggest is on the ADU, lower the plate heights, because it's a narrow building. I think having a 9-foot second story is going to really make it look weird. I think if you lower the plate height to 8 feet and the first floor 9 feet and 8 feet, I think it'll make it a much more attractive, balanced-looking building. So that's my only recommendation for that. Otherwise, I think, yeah, you've pretty much, I like even though it is modern and it doesn't agree with the other house, I think they work together. I think you've finally managed to make it look like they can work together. So those would be my only comments. So they're here for comments only. Would someone like to entertain a motion, please?
Chair Miller, pardon my interruption again. So this project is here for comments only. However, they're looking to be forwarded to the Planning Commission. So if you could include, you know, comments specific to size, bulk, and scale, and any other specific comments you can provide for consideration at that hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to forward this project to the Planning Commission with the following comments. The board feels that the size, bulk, and scale of the home is appropriate. We appreciate that they've addressed our comments from our previous meeting. The board suggests lowering the plate heights of the ADU so that the first floor is 9 feet and the second floor is 8 feet, as we feel because of the narrowness of the structure that would have it feel a little more in balance. The board appreciates the landscape and thinks it's appropriate, and that the screening provided will be helpful in screening it with the adjacent properties. The board also feels that the style of the architecture, due to the fact that the property is so far from the street, causes minimal impact in terms of size, bulk, and scale in terms of its location on the property. So that is my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Claus,
Yes.
Board Member Klein,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Sorry. Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, thank-
Just for the record, Ms. Gu, Board Member Anderson abstains from the vote for this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it was clear that this was forwarded to Planning Commission?
Yes.
Great.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right, see you later.
Do you want one of these back? We don't need them.
Okay, moving on to item 3, for 229 Vista Del Mar Drive. This is a continued item. Project design approval and final approval is requested. It's a proposal to construct a 2-story, 1,200 square foot detached accessory dwelling unit, including a 200 square foot covered deck and a 200 square foot second floor deck associated with an existing 1-story, 1,920 square foot single unit residence and an attached 446 square foot garage located in the Hillside Design District and non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. Staff hearing officer approval of a coastal development permit was granted on March 23rd, 2022. The proposed total of 3,566 square foot of development on a 27,230 square foot lot is 75% of the maximum guideline for a lot area ratio. Project design approval and final approval is requested. Neighborhood preservation findings and Hillside Design District and slope lot findings are required. Project was last reviewed on September 20th, 2022. Do we have minutes to read into the record, please?
Number 1, in general, the board requests to reduce the proposed plate heights. 2, study a more compatible roof, both in pitch and in the nature of the roof, gable roof versus hip roof. 3, provide additional screening from the street. 4, study reducing the size of the second floor of the ADU or reduce the size of the ADU and study incorporating or attaching to the existing family residence.
All right, thank you. Kevin, if you'd like to present your project, that'd be great. And how you address those comments.
We'll walk through it. Kevin Moore, architect for the owner. Okay, so as directed, we took another look at the design and in specifically how to better incorporate the overall architecture into the existing house. So starting with the site plan. Go there. So we went back and we added additional detail to the site plan and brought in the adjacent neighbors' houses, locations, some other information there. So now we can see the existing house here, the neighboring house here, and then the one to the north there. And so what we've done, can zoom in. What we've done is we've pulled the ADU further back from the street. So now at its closest, it's 34 feet from the front property line. And we've also taken a little chunk out of the second floor area and moved that to the back of the ADU, which does a couple of things. It further reduces the mass, bulk, and scale as viewed from the street, and also pulls this corner away from the neighbor as well. And then thirdly, we added a couple layers of landscape screening. So one at the street here, we're proposing a couple of olives here, some citrus in this little side yard area, and then a few more olives here along the property line, along with a hedge that'll kind of come in over time. So that should help soften the appearance of this ADU and the addition. And then let's go to the floor plan. Oh, that's just the existing floor plan. So again, the ADU essentially got a little narrower at the front and a little longer at the back, so it extends further back this way. And the real change to the plan occurs here in this front bedroom. You'll see that we took a little notch out of here, so about an 18-inch step back here at this corner, which translates upwards into the roof and really starts to dramatically decrease the width of that mass up there. And then, let's see, thirdly, we took a hard look at the grading and figured out that we could do it in a different way relative to the house, and which helped us drop the ground floor, finished floor, by 12 inches. So there's a reduction of 12 inches there in total height. And then we took a look at the roof, and if we match the existing house roof, which is a pretty low slope with a little split here at the garage, so you can see we're mimicking that. That brought us down an additional almost 3 feet at this lower ridge line here. So we were up here, we're all the way down here now. So the overall effect is pretty dramatic. So if we look at it on a side, at the side here, you can see that we're almost, 4-foot difference here in overall height. Here you see that little carve out here, giving a little bit of dimension to this facade. And then we included, on the last sheet here, we included a couple of 3D views with the adjacent houses, just to give a sense of what it will look like. And we actually had to reduce the transparency of the trees here just so you could even get a sense of what it looks like there. So although you're seeing the architecture beyond, it'll be mostly screened by the proposed trees. So again, you can see our roof lines match now. We have a similar step up, break and plane in the roof line here. And I think it knits into the existing house really well now, and I'm happy with the changes. The owner's happy with the changes, and we look forward to your questions and comments.
All right, thank you. Did we get public comment?
Yes. Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen? Sure. Thank you. Okay. For those attending on Zoom and wish to make oral public comment on this item, please click on the raise your hand icon. And when staff calls on you, please unmute yourself. And while we allow those on Zoom a moment, we did receive written correspondence on this item from a Gregory Offner and a Deborah Eaton. Both were distributed to the board prior to the hearing. Ms. Gu, do you see any raised hands for this item?
At this time, I do not see any raised hands on Zoom at all. Thank you.
We have several speaker slips, but if you are attending in the audience and you wish to provide oral public comment on this item, please fill out a speaker slip located next to the back door. Bring it up to the SFDB secretary. We will call you up one by one. Please approach the podium. Press on the base of the mic. It will light up green, and you will have 2 minutes to speak. Please be mindful, it is 2 minutes. So first we'll have Jeff Harris, please.
Right.
Oh, great. Hi, I'm Jeff Harris. I live at 167 Vista Del Mar, about 8 houses to the left of the project. And I'm glad to see the elevation in this particular presentation, because what I noticed in the last meeting is there was nothing that showed exactly the scale of what they were presenting relative to the neighborhood, or specifically the house to the right of them, because our hillside drops off significantly. I don't really think that was 100% accurate. I don't know if you can look at something that I brought from today. If you can, I'd like you to look at it. There's two you can pass around. I'm in the business of, I produce hazardous material packaging. I do things to scale for a living. I gave you 2 printouts of photographs taken today. The first one shows that retaining wall to the right is 5 feet 7 inches. Using that scale, and I only had access to the previous plans, that's an accurate 24 feet 8 inch roof line, although I did not account for the grade that goes up. So actually it's less than that. I mean, more than that. Now, he brought it down a couple feet, so it might be about that, but I don't believe that his drawing accurately shows the neighbor's house roof line either. It appears to be higher than in reality. I'm 6'3". I was standing there, took it at eye level. There you have it. So I don't feel like it's consistent at all with our neighborhood as represented, nor originally presented. That's my take on it. I would love to also, just for the record, say parking is going to be a big problem. I know that's not in your preview, but in case anybody looks at this video, you know, maybe they'll consider it, because it's going to be a real hardship for our neighborhood. So those are my concerns. Speaking for both my wife and myself, thank you.
I don't think the wall one is working, that's why we have to switch it back and forth.
Okay, next we have Paul Margolis, please. Is Paul, okay. And Paul, please make sure to speak into the mic, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay, I didn't know how this was going to work, and I'm not that good at it anyway, but can we show these pictures somehow?
You're gonna use this and not your phone?
Whichever, my phone or... Okay, will I be able to shift the pictures? Okay, well, I have to deal with it. I'm Paul Margolis. I'm the neighbor, the adjacent neighbor to the right. And I took some photographs, one of which is very similar to the previous speaker. I guess our concerns are the same. My concern is on 2 particular items. One is the screening between the new project and my house, and the erosion that takes place almost all the time. You're not going to be able to tell what's going on without me being able to.
Zooming in right now.
Yeah, but I need to shift the pictures.
I can scroll for you.
Yeah, but they're not, okay, I can tell you what to do maybe, but can I, is there no other way to do this?
No, just tell Leslie to scroll down, she'll scroll.
Yeah, but they don't scroll. They're email photos, and I have to pick the email.
I think,
My cursor's working?
It is, it's receiving.
Oh.
I see it.
Oh, yeah, what do you know? Okay, so just beyond the previous picture that you saw of that wall, let me see if I can just move back a little bit. That's a stone wall that begins where the photograph that you saw, where that stucco wall ends. That stucco wall was required by the city, and this stone wall, which is only 2.5 to 3 feet high, you're now looking at the driveway, by the way. That blue structure that you see in the upper left is where the existing house is that you're considering. Let me get back here to a couple other pictures. oops, sorry.
Chair Miller, the 2 minutes are up, so at your
Wow.
discretion, you can
Okay.
allow
Yeah,
two
can you
more time.
Yeah,
encapsulate?
I've only got 7 pictures. You already saw 2, so I've got 5 more to go. This is the.
Go real quick, if, kind of encapsulate your point.
Okay, encapsulate. I'm very concerned about the foliage or the visual barriers between the 2 properties. There is no existing hedge.
Okay.
It's overgrown ivy. And I'm concerned about this little hedge that's going to be planted and whether it's going to actually grow in or not and what it's consisting of. The tree that you see on the property or that exists on the property is this one towards the back. It doesn't screen us at all. And the erosion that takes place is pretty substantial down the hill. You can see there's no screening. That's the existing screening right now. You can see the erosion. That used to have a rock wall. Those rocks that are there have rolled down. The rock wall that used to be there is now completely covered by erosion. So I'm concerned about any controls that we have now that we've lost that ability of the earth to absorb what it was absorbing and now is running off the roof.
Okay,
And, that's basically it.
I kind of get your point. I think
Yeah.
I think the board's
So
pretty
it's
comfortable.
those 2 things.
All right,
Thank you, Paul. And just in the future, if convenient for you, you're welcome to send us the photos to the SFDB secretary email, and we can distribute to the board prior to the hearing.
So I just send them by email?
Yeah.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay, the next speaker slip I have is for Cameron Porter.
Hello again. I just wanted to come and speak again to the fact that I do not think this ADU fits our neighborhood based on the fact that they have 4 additional bedrooms on top of the 4-bedroom house that already exists for a total of 8 bedrooms in our little neighborhood. As I mentioned last time, I did recently renovate my house, but I only included 4 bedrooms, not 8. And I'm very concerned for not only myself and my family, but I have 2 small children. I'm concerned about the impact this is going to have on my quiet neighborhood, specifically because, as I think everyone can tell, this is being designed to pack as many people that will pay as high of rent as they can possibly get out of whoever resides in this residence. I appreciate the fact that they've brought the plate height down and they've done some grading, but the fact still remains that 4 bedrooms on top of 4 bedrooms still equals 8 bedrooms. And when you take the impact that the vehicles parking there and the people that are going to be renting this place, it's just very, very concerning and sad for our neighborhood. I was really hoping that maybe the owner could do the right thing and maybe scale down to maybe 3 bedrooms. That might seem a little bit more in line, hopefully, but just my hope that, that the owner can reconsider placing this many units, this many bedrooms within our small community. I mentioned before, I think the FAR calculation is terribly off when you're considering what actual developable space you're talking about here. If you stand at the edge of that cliff and you look down or go to the bottom and look up, there isn't that big of a lot there. 30,000 square feet is kind of a joke. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
all right, thank you very much.
Okay. Last speaker slip here, Anthony Chavez.
I would just like to agree with everything everyone said about our neighborhood. And I really do think it's definitely not fitting, doesn't fit in our neighborhood. Really concerned about the cars. I know that's not your issue. But also that, I think we brought it up, but when you're standing on that corner, if there's 2 stories above where you're standing at that retaining wall, that's like a 3-story building. that's not very far away, 15 to 20 feet away, really. It's like ominous. It just doesn't fit. Again, I just agree with all of these guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
If anyone in the audience wishes to make oral public comment on this, you're welcome to do so, and you can fill out a slip afterwards. Seeing no further comment, we will close public comment and turn it back to you, Chair Miller.
All right, thank you very much. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Colossus, do you have any questions, please?
Yeah. So I'd like to try to understand more clearly. I don't know what is the address of the parcel to the right? I believe it would be Mr. Margolis's property.
I'm not sure offhand what the address number is.
235? Okay. So I'm trying to understand, clearly there's an elevation difference in terms of natural topography between the two parcels. So based on the retaining wall, it would suggest that there's maybe I'll call it a 6 to 8 foot maybe delta between grades. Does that seem approximately accurate?
Let's take a look at the street photo here. I think it's hard to see there.
This lower one, the lower photo seemed helpful.
Well, so here's that neighboring parcel here. So you see the I guess flat area of the site is here. Our level is up here. So it varies. Obviously at the street, this driveway is sloping down to the street, so it's going to have a more severe height difference at that point. And that's also where that corner of that retaining wall is that gentleman pointed out was about 5'7" as he measured it.
So what would you estimate that the delta is, let's say, at the front wall of Mr. Margolis? Yeah, right at that corner. What do you
Sort
think?
of over here.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say. It's probably 4 to 4.5 feet.
Okay. And just as a matter of background, can you kind of remind us why you decided to place the ADU on the, I'm going to call it the south side of the property, as opposed to, I know the property falls away at some point. I don't know exactly where based on this drawing. Okay, there you go. That's helpful.
So this line is roughly kind of the top of hillside right there. So this is really the obvious place to put it. It does impact the owner's house as well, but there really isn't an area to fit this in that's geologically stable. Another reason is that with our soils report, they did a couple borings, and the closer we get to this hillside, obviously the more trouble we have with our foundation and drainage. So by keeping it as far away from that as possible, it's a better situation for everybody.
Okay, so you had a geological study done with foundation recommendations. So was there anything that said that that is not buildable, or were there recommendations such that you would have just been required to do caissons, for example? If you were to move closer to or onto the slope itself?
Well, onto the slope is kind of beyond a buildable slope per city regulations.
Okay, because you're over 30%, okay.
So the recommendation was to try and keep away from that edge as much as possible in order to reduce the amount of grading required and impact to the hillside.
Okay. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Can you review, just really briefly, the existing house materials and then proposed materials on the ADU? And if you have colors?
So the existing house is, like most of the neighborhood, a mix of materials. There's some board and bat along the street-facing sides. And then as you turn the corner, immediately it transitions into a rough stucco. So the board and bat doesn't turn those two corners, it stops immediately. And then down here, there's a plaster course there. So our proposed design is similar in that it uses the same materials and takes that, but takes it and wraps the corners with it and finishes the materials off appropriately. And so we have kind of a lower floor of plaster, and then the upper area is a board and bat material.
Okay, with a composite roof and windows and doors that you're proposing with, I mean, the main house is X, and what is it, the ADU?
So the main house is an aluminum window, and that's what we're proposing here, and the color will match. So black anodized, or I guess bronze anodized.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Eric Kaling, do you have any questions, please?
No questions, thanks.
Yeah, Board Member Klein, do you have any questions, please?
Yes, could you go to the planting?
Sure.
Do you have the sizes of the plant material you're proposing?
Yeah, so the olives would be a 24-inch box, so there, and then 10-gallon citrus there, and then I believe we just call out our 10-gallon hedge material here.
Okay, great. That's my only question.
Your plate heights for the ADU?
So they're 9 foot and 9 foot.
Okay. And the existing house is 8 foot, is that correct? 8'4".
It's like 8'4", yeah.
Yeah, that's what they used to do, okay. Okay, I think those are my only questions, so I'll bring it back to the board for comments. Vice Chair Collas, do you have any comments, please?
I do. I appreciate the changes that have been made in an effort to reduce the perceived height of this. But I cannot support this project. I will not vote for this project. And the reasons are as follows. I think that the two-story ADU looms over the adjacent property, and it makes it almost impossible for there to be true privacy. I think that the siting, S-I-T-I-N-G, not S-I-D-I-N-G, the siting of the ADU is being driven, and this is conjecture, but based on the information that I've received from the applicant, it's born of economic feasibility. And I think the reality is that sometimes there are parcels where development is just not economically feasible if you are to be truly compatible with the neighborhood. And I think that's exactly what is going on here. I think the ADU should have been pushed back further onto the lot, and that's being avoided because of costs. And if in fact this ends up being rented out, which ADUs can be rented out, there will be a lot of income born of this ADU, and the owner could make the investment necessary in order to be more compatible with the neighborhood.
Okay. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I would agree as well with Leslie's comments. And, you know, just going back to the need for affordable housing and additional units, understood. But, you know, the challenge with these ADUs and changing our neighborhoods, the second story AD, I mean, there's 1,000 different solutions for the ADUs attached on the main house. They still can provide an enhancement to the neighborhood, and this one, I would agree, does not. It is a separate massing that doesn't tie in with the main house. So, you know, to me, I would look at the total solution. Is there a way to get the ADU blended with the house and enhance the neighborhood, other than this detached two-story mass? I just, yeah, it's not being a good neighbor due to the bulk and the mass of that ADU. So, yeah, that's my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Arkaling, do you have any comments, please?
I do. Can we go to sheet A 4.1? That's page 17. If we can go to zoom in on view 2. And so I believe the roof lines are a major improvement. I appreciate your study and trying to match it with the garage roof. I think it helps blend it more. I believe quality architectural materials are being used. And yeah, just to add on with Board Member Anderson, you know, there's many ways to proceed with doing an ADU and including integrating it with the main house, but I'm looking at it here and it's, you know, it's a standalone. I know you did your best with the roof, but and I understand you're concerned with the placement of the building, but I'm okay to, I cannot comment on the number of bedrooms. It's not part of my purview, but you know, this rendering, I really appreciate you providing it. Just it helps me understand that, you know, it's very prominent from the street, and I believe it should be, I believe there should be more serious study in tucking the building, pushing it back away from the street. It's forward. I know we discussed this at the last meeting and, you know, you did your best to explore, but I feel like more serious exploration needs to go about on how far back can you go. I know you're trying to play it very safe, but this is, you know, aggressive construction in this kind of an area where, you know, there's like two buildings going on here. So I would suggest that needs to be studied, pushing it back away. And also the deck, I do want to go to sheet A 2.11, page 13. If we can zoom in on view 1. Thanks. I mean, it's not in my purview to look at, you know, for private views, but, you know, I know we have our good neighborhood guidelines, and I believe more studies should be looked at with the size of that deck. I understand that it goes from bedroom 204, it goes out 6 feet, and I would like to maybe see that, you know, while you're pushing the property back, you know, possibly consider making that portion outside of bedroom 204 more of a hallway rather than like an actual viewing deck, just tucking it back a little bit more.
Sorry, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So are you talking about this area of the deck?
Yes.
In relationship to the property line?
I'm looking at just this, yeah.
Even though it pulls away from the property line?
That's just something for you to consider as you look at possibly reducing the size. If there's other areas in terms of reducing the size of the deck, would be welcome to that too. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I think the changes are an improvement to the project. In regards to landscaping, I also appreciate the addition of screening. I would recommend to install 15-gallon hedging along the property line and a larger tree species at the front and along the property line to be a more vertical tree. Olives don't really get very large.
All right, thank you. What are the total number of bedrooms for both buildings? 8, was it 8 bedrooms?
I believe there's 4 in the existing house and
4 in the ADU.
4 in this, yeah.
So it's 8 bedrooms.
Mr. Chair, and just a clarification for
Yeah.
the board. This project has been reviewed multiple times by staff. It
Yeah.
meets it meets the zoning code for the size of the ADU and it meets all of the objective zoning standards for this project.
Great. So there's two confluences going on here, and I think Santa Barbara is in a unique position to really, what do I want to say, highlight the issues here. One of the issues is housing, and we need housing. So there's been all these bills passed in Sacramento to pass these ADU laws to supposedly address these issues of a housing shortage. And so they passed these rules and laws to alter and change the zoning requirements so that we could address the housing shortage. What the politicians don't get to see is how neighborhoods are reacting to this. They're getting kind of a one-sided story of seeing, great, we can, and I've seen specials on YouTube about, and these architects come in and they design these things and how wonderful it is, but they never mentioned how the neighborhood as a whole is impacted by it. And they're starting to see that. And I think this is incredibly important that powers that be watch this video and seeing how neighbors react, because you underline that they've done everything right. The architect did what was exactly appropriate, passed all the zoning laws, but you never build a normal 8-bedroom house in a neighborhood like this before these laws were passed. You just couldn't do it. So there's this impact occurring. And I think this is something important to really look at. I also think the economic climate is changing, where suddenly, this sort of crisis is kind of resolve itself anyway. But as far as going back to this project, I think the plate height should be lowered to 8 foot, 8 foot, to match the house. I think it is essentially building another house between two houses. So I'm really not comfortable with that with the overall feel of the neighborhood. It would be nice to see it incorporated with the existing houses as like part of the house. But if you do that, you can't have the 4 bedrooms. Is that correct? The law is that if it's connected to the existing house, you're limited in size. So you're taking advantage of the law of making it a detached house so that you could put more bedrooms in. Yay, we get more housing. Boo, it's altering the neighborhood. So, this is interesting. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a recent law passed, maybe it's a city ordinance, that there wasn't too long ago. We couldn't even look at this.
So, Mr. Chair, through you to the rest of the board, that
Yeah.
this project, it fell under state law, the government code,
Yeah.
and there was no design review triggered.
Right.
Eventually, our accessory dwelling unit ordinance was extended to the coastal zone, and so when a project does not meet an accessory dwelling unit doesn't meet the ministerial design criteria,
Yeah.
That's an objective standard, then it is subject to discretionary review at Single Family Design Board, or HLC, depending on the project. But yes, as I said, the standard applies, and just to, again, advise all board members to really, to understand that the purview of this board is the aesthetics and the
Right.
design, and that this project has already received approval of a coastal development permit, and that parking is outside of the purview, that density is outside of the purview of this board, that really, that any comments or any kind of motion should really be focusing on the aesthetics, the neighborhood compatibility, all of the findings that you're required to make. And that way, again, that everybody kind of stays in their lane, and that in terms of, and that's helpful for members of the public as well, to understand again, what your purview is versus in other boards.
So I want to read one letter that we got to clarify some stuff here, because I think it should be put in the record and understood. It said, "I'm a local resident that is very concerned about your terrible decision to greenlight this monstrosity of a project. I'm tired of continuous one-sided debate and private behind closed-door votes with no transparency. As a longtime Democrat, and I'm a Democrat, by the way, I am shocked at the level of disingenuous actions. This project will shred the peaceful nature of the neighborhood with generations of Santa Barbarians and Henry's Beach dwellers. Please build to our neighborhood scale and follow the local codes. You are assured to be a lawsuit-free if your words and actions are commensurate with the statute put forth." So I can only add that if we were to stop this building, would be more likely of a lawsuit as opposed to approving it based on the current laws. So I just want to make that clarification. And I assure you, there's no backdoor deals going on. That would violate the Brown Act. And like I said, what Ellen is saying is laws that were passed by our legislature. And we're doing exactly what the laws were told, passed for. So anyway, with that being said,
Chair Miller, pardon my interruption.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to be aware, we did receive a late speaker slip.
okay.
Up to you at your discretion if you'd like to have that person comment or not.
I think I'm going to bring this to the board. Do you want to hear this one more speaker, or do you think you're ready to pass a motion?
Sure.
All right, so yes.
Yeah, I think it'd be prudent.
Thank you.
to let them speak.
Okay.
Yes. My name is Cecilia Falk, and I live on Vista Del Mar.
Push
Oh, do I have to push something?
the little green button in the foot.
It's on.
Okay.
It's on, okay.
Get closer to the mic, please.
I wanted to make the board aware that there are 9 children that live in the vicinity of this monstrosity, this atrocious monstrosity. And I don't think that's fair, that you cannot give these children a neighborhood to live in where they can ride their bikes in that specific area. It's an area where the kids can ride, walk, and there's 2 next door, there's 2 there, there's 2 there, there's a new baby there, and there's 2 more. And unfortunately, they're all in that area. And there's more on the way, and there's more up the street. So it's not right that you would take this monstrosity and put it in our neighborhood where it's going to take away the livelihood or the life the kids could have in our neighborhood. And that's just not, it's not okay. He can put it on the house, like everywhere else, and maybe we can work out something in our neighborhood where you can help us, and we'll build something on our properties, We'll build a unit. You guys want rooms? Maybe we can get some of the neighbors that could build an ADU, and then you could have your quota. But to do this to our neighborhood is just outrageous, and it's not right, and they're asking too much, and you just get this LA money that can come in and just destroy neighborhoods. So
Well,
I'm not for it, and I really would hope that you would consider the children, because there's 9 of them, and they deserve to have a neighborhood to live in that's peaceful and safe and not a bunch of cars coming in and out, and it's just not right to do that to this neighborhood. And please, work with us. We'll build something. We'll build ADU. I'm willing to build one. Will you help me so that I don't get stuck in the permit process?
God, no.
Come on, come on. I'm sure we can get someone else to build one,
All right.
too.
Well, thank you.
I
We
can get you
appreciate.
probably 5 of them. How
All
many
right.
do you, and that will each have 2 bedrooms. How
All
about
right,
that?
well, appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, if
Mr.
you could
Chair.
officially close public comment at this
Yes, I'd
point.
like to officially close public comment. Would you like to make a
Mr.
comment?
Chair, yeah, if I could just
Mr.
have
Moore.
a brief comment. So I grew up in Santa Barbara. I was fortunate enough to be able to come back here and make a life for myself. Housing, as you mentioned, is critical. Increasing the cost of construction will only serve to reduce the amount of housing. ADUs need to be feasible economically. They have to be a certain size to make sense. Construction is incredibly expensive. I understand the impacts to the neighborhood, but I also understand the impacts to families whose children have to move out of Santa Barbara because they can't find a place to live. Or, who knows, this could be rented out to a family with 2 kids. So it doesn't matter, you know, that there's 8 bedrooms on this site. The FAR allows for, we're below the recommended FAR. It's strictly about the amount of square footage on this site. And you say that an 8-bedroom house couldn't be approved? It certainly could. We're below the recommended FAR. So asking the owner to reduce the size of this is simply not economically feasible. And that's a tragedy because this is potentially 1 housing unit that we're losing out of 8,000 that we're supposed to have in just a short time. So I would hope that these decisions get made appropriately based on the aesthetics, based on the design guidelines, and that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. By the way, he did underscore something there that you should have heard, 8,000 units. Sacramento is required that our city build within a certain period, or they're going to start taking over our building department. And one of the first things they're targeting is our design review boards. So that's what's going on. So anyway, with that being said, would someone like to entertain a motion?
I'm sorry, to the
yeah.
audience.
Mr. Chair, this is your meeting, and this is out of order.
So I understand the political ramifications that this is kind of addressing or revealing, but in honor of, in respect to Mr. Moore's project, we need to approve his project and get it moving forward, so. Would someone please entertain a motion?
And Chair Miller, just into the board, this project has been deemed complete. We are under the Permit Streamline Act, and it's here for project design approval and final approval at your discretion.
Hearing no one making a motion, I will attempt to make a motion and see where we go. So they're here for comments only.
They're here for project design approval and final approval.
Okay, I don't feel the board is ready to give that yet, so we're going to ask you to come back with a.
May I ask, could we have just a 3-minute recess? If I could speak with the applicant outside just for a moment?
Oh, all right.
If you're willing
Is
to
that
do that.
appropriate? Okay, yes, let's give it a 5-minute recess. So everyone be back here at 5:23. record? Can we kind of get a prize of what the meeting was
Yeah,
about?
so, Mr. Chair, through you and board members and to members of the public, so anytime we deem a project complete and it's scheduled for project design approval, the state has mandates, it's called the Permit Streamlining Act. And so within a certain amount of time, a discretionary board has to make a decision on a development project. And we are coming close to hitting that deadline. So I was asking the applicant, kind of what is your interest? And the applicant explained that the preference, because you have multiple options. You can approve a project, you can deny a project, or you can continue a project. So, or you can approve it with conditions. In this scenario, it sounds like, there's still kind of split, there's not a clear four board members that I'm hearing, at least at this point. And so I think the applicant is interested in a continuance. But we have to, from staff's point of view, we talked about what are some possible dates that we can make sure that we're honoring the permit streamlining deadlines, but the applicant could come back. So that's really the gist of it. So I hope that clarifies, or if you have any other questions about that, I'm
Okay,
happy to
I think we
explain.
need to we're going to have 3 straw roll calls based on what you just said. So the first roll call I'd like to have.
I think, if I may, it was just like generally speaking, but I think the applicant is interested in a continuance as opposed to,
I got that, but I think there's some people on this board that want to deny it. So do we have that purview?
generally, if I may advise the board, if the applicant is willing to come back with, potential
So I would say that's
alterations
not
to
a-
the plan.
That's not an option,
What's that?
to deny the project flat, like, just say they,
Well, you could, but again, I think from a advisory standpoint, that the applicant is willing to go back and check with his client to figure out if
Okay.
there's some other alternatives. So I think that it's generally, it's, I would recommend your
Okay.
consideration for continuing, just so the applicant can speak with his client.
all right, great. All right, so I'm going to attempt a motion for a continuance with the following comments. The board feels the size, bulk, and scale is a little still out of proportion with the existing home. Would like to see the plate heights lowered. The board appreciates the roof lines matching the existing home. There have been comments on the board of relocating the structure farther back on the property. The board appreciates the existing, the new structure matching the materials on the existing home to try to give it a matching look to it. I believe that's all I have. Would someone like to second it?
I'll second, and can I add to study the tree selection to be larger and more column-like along the property line? Larger in the front and more column-like along the property line.
Okay, I accept that.
And for the record, we're going to continue to date certain of 11:30, please.
Continue to November 30th? Okay, so moving it to November 30th. Okay, with that,
Can we add to
Yeah.
blend the second floor of the ADU, I don't know, reduce scale, reduce size, tie it in better with the existing house? What else? Blend the aesthetics, yeah, enhance the neighborhood.
so are you saying studying the scaling of the second story?
Yes, and how it ties with the existing
And
house.
how it ties with the existing house? Preferably reducing it, I think is what she's wanting to say. Okay. Any other comments? Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll make another comment. the only way I can support this project is if it's a one-story ADU, if it remains in the same location as currently proposed.
No, stop, please. Absolutely, please. Okay.
So, Mr.
That's
Chair,
based
Well,
on,
she-
that's
you
based on
can't- we-
relationship to the existing house architecturally, privacy concerns with the neighboring parcel to the south.
I-
Mr.
I-
Chair,
So
Mr.
due
Chair.
to the
I'm
situation,
sorry,
I can't
Mr.
accept
Chair,
that.
Can I just interrupt really
Yeah.
quick? So we have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
And Board Member Anderson made an amendment.
Yep.
And I think you accepted that amendment.
Yes,
So we still have a motion on the floor.
right.
And procedurally, it should, if anybody has any other amendments that they want to propose for your consideration, now would be the time.
Yeah.
Or we need to move through and have a roll call vote.
Yeah.
And then if there are any comments, or depending on the motion, or if it passes, then those who are not in favor can make comments around that. So
So
that's procedurally, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I understand your comments, Leslie, but I don't think it's in the purview of the board to accept or not accept a second story in any case, so I'm not going to accept that for now. So, did I get a second for the motion? For the motion?
I'll second again.
Okay, so,
Chair Miller?
yeah,
Can we ask staff to repeat?
yeah, could you review the motion, please?
Okay, the board continued indefinitely, or is it to specific date?
November
To
11th.
November 30th, okay.
30th.
Okay. Continue to November 30th with comments. The board appreciates the efforts of the applicant for neighborhood compatibility, lower the plate heights, push back the ADU further on the property. Materials are to match the existing home. Study the tree selection to be larger, especially the existing tree on the property, the olive tree. Blend the second floor of the ADU for reduced to tie better into the existing house. Scaling and ties with the existing house, and study to remain, I wasn't sure if that last motion
Yeah, that's
addition
not quite
passed.
correct.
Okay. I wasn't sure if the study to remain one story on the existing lot actually was added or was denied.
That was denied.
Okay, great, thank you.
So for clarification on the last comment, it sounds like blend the second floor of the ADU to better match with the aesthetics of the existing main residence.
I think it was study the scaling, not blend the match. Study the scaling of the second story to better match the neighborhood.
I'm sorry, if you could use your mic, just for.
So to study the second story floor so that the scaling ties in better with the existing home.
Okay.
That's what she's trying to say. Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
I can clarify the landscape comment.
Please.
It would-
Clarify the
We
landscape
just
comment.
need to add to it, and for the planting to be more column-like, right?
Just study the size of the material and the shape of the material of the trees selection to be larger.
So there's better screening.
Correct.
Is everyone happy with the motion, or should we read it again? Hearing none, let's have a roll call, please.
Go. Chair Miller?
Yes?
Vice Chair Claus?
No?
Board Member Klein?
Yes.
Board Member Akelian?
No.
And Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank
And
you.
if- Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Chair Miller, if we could have those who voted no, please state for the record their opinion on the no.
Sure.
A few things, including, I do not believe the plate heights should be lowered. Thanks.
That's interesting.
My no is based on the fact that I think it's out of scale for both relative to the existing residents on the property as well as the neighborhood at large. I don't think we can ensure privacy for the adjacent parcel to the south, regardless of screening, and I think it's just too large.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Good luck. Still. Okay, let's. Okay, let's move on to item number 4, 2121 Los Tunas Road.
Part of my interruption, but we're still holding a public hearing, so if everybody could keep it quiet.
Okay. Okay, this is a continued item. This is a continued item for project design approval. Proposal to construct a new 4,413 square foot, two-story, single-unit residence with a detached 713 square foot detached garage and a covered deck and porch located on a vacant lot in the Hillside Design District. The project includes a new driveway, a lap pool, and associated site and landscape improvements, including removal of eucalyptus and coast live oak trees, to be replaced with 21 new replacement oak trees and other trees landscape. The proposed total of 4,290 square feet on a 46,294 square lot is 86% of the maximum guideline floor-to-lot area ratio. Project design approval is requested. Neighborhood preservation findings in Hillside Design District and slope lot findings are required. Project was last reviewed on July 5th, 2022. And do we have minutes to read into the record, please?
All right. 1, study the color palette of the stucco windows and fascias for a more neutral color palette to be more compatible with the Hillside Design District neighborhood. 2, study a reduction of plate heights by at least 2 feet for an overall 10-foot plate height where possible. 3, study the cantilever deck on the main level of the house and whether it can be stepped back or brought closer to the southerly wall of the residence to reduce its prominence as viewed from Los Tunas Road. 4, provide material and color information for the underside of the eaves. 5, provide a sun shading study, most specifically for the south and the westerly elevations to reduce the effect of the glazing effect, especially to the south. 6, the board supports the curving the wall at the northwest corner in proximity to the right-of-way line. 7, study or consider removal or relocation of the proposed palm trees. 8, consider using a cluster of native plants such as Toyon ceanothus, prunus, or is that rhamnus? Okay, thank you. 9, study the way sandstone is incorporated into the project and the manner of its use on the main residence versus the site walls. 10, provide a 3D perspective rendering similar to that shown on the current plan sheet A4.2, a view from Los Tunas Street at pedestrian level from the perspective of the Santiago neighborhood, looking at the south side of the proposed project.
All right, thank you. If you could address those items, that'd be great.
I will. And how much time do I have, just so I'm sensitive to time? 11 minutes?
Well, 15.
15.
Wait, reset it.
Okay. Set that play clock. Yeah. All right.
Well, now it's 10. Okay, there you go.
I'll trust her. Thank you, everybody. This is nice to see you again. This is our third visit. Chairwoman Anderson, nice to meet you. I think we've spent time with the other chair members. My name's Ian Williamson. This is my wife, Bree Wright.
Hi.
And I apologize ahead of time if we get a little emotional. We've been at this for about a year and a half. And we addressed each of those items that was read just now. So I'm happy to say I think could check a yes, hopefully next to each one of those. And I'll take the next 14 minutes to kind of demonstrate that. So I wanted to start with this elevation because I think plate heights was something that you all recommended we take action on. Our original design was
fairly high. This is the north elevation as we approach our front door. We have reduced that top plate to 10 feet. So I think that was maybe the first item or second item on reducing it down from 12 feet to 10 feet. We've also really spent a lot of times with the neighbors. We have literally met with 12 of our neighbors in the Las Tunas area and really received feedback as much as we could on what we can do to be following into the good neighbor guidelines. So we've got some of those drawings that we can share with you. I'd like to point your eye, if I can, to this bottom image of the two here. You'll see the Ensleys, who are our neighbors to the east. There's a person that is depicted here at their floor level of their home. They had asked us to make sure that we were not in line of sight for them, and as you can see, we're quite a bit below it. When we started this project with you all maybe a year and a half ago, our top of roof was at about where that person's feet are. So we were kind of in line. You can see how much we've dropped the house into the hillside. We did receive a public comment earlier today about, I think somebody down in the Santiago neighborhood below us asking if we could bury the house more into the landscape. And as you can see at that lower level, we actually are about 13 feet excavating down into the hillside. So I started with that first elevation because I wanted to show you that the house is a one-story home from that front entrance. What we've done for the lower viewpoints that were brought up was a number of plantings. We have suggested those plantings, and I'm not going to be able to read off the scientific names, but the ones that you had all recommended, we have placed. You'll see down here below the pool, we have an arborist that we hired, obviously, there's about 6 oak trees that are being removed. We're replacing them with, and Ms. Klein had recommended the large box oaks, I think 30-gallon oaks and 15-gallon oaks. And so as that matures, it really will hide the retaining wall. And that was one of the asks, I think, from a previous board member, was to look at hiding that retaining wall from that lower view. And this is that view down from Las Tunas and below from the neighbors. And then we have addressed one other, the civil engineering. You'll see the drawings. We hired Flowers and Associates, and she did design a stormwater management plan. Then obviously we're complying with the fire department's review of the project. All the safety concerns about the slope of the driveway and turnarounds. I think that was in a letter from a public comment today, was to make sure we address that. As far as colors and materials, we did take the advice of the board. We've got natural color palette here that you'll see. Again, we're using the Santa Barbara sandstone, and per one of the recommendations, that will be on the house, and then delineated between the house masonry structure to landscape retaining walls, the retaining wall by the entrance. We'd probably do if everyone agrees, to a board form concrete to again delineate between the house and the landscape. Obviously, we're going to use, get the term wrong, dark nights lighting to make sure that we're not, dark sky, thank you, polluting with light at night. We want to avoid any impact on the neighbors as far as lighting, so we're definitely going to be sensitive to that. The stucco, we went from white to a more natural kind of sandstone color. I think that was a recommendation too. And I think I've addressed most of them. I don't know, Bree, if there's anything that you think that we did, in addition to reducing the plate heights, we brought in the deck another 5 feet. So we reduced the size of that. I think you all made a comment that it was kind of had a cantilevered feel. And if I scroll back up, I think it's the west elevation. Yes, this view here. And then, I'm sorry. You had made the comment about grounding that deck. And so what we're proposing, we want to keep it kind of elegant. We don't want a big mass. And I think you were kind of okay with either a big mass, or what we're proposing here is kind of a nice structural steel pole that would ground that deck instead of it being cantilevered down to the patio below it. We've reduced our FAR down to 86, so we're pretty close to 85, which was per recommendation. And we feel like we've really done everything we can to be compatible to the neighborhood, whether it's color, bulk, size, square footage, materials, the landscaping, the civil engineering on the site. And again, last comment, and maybe I'll then open it up to the public, is the house is situated south, and that's, I think, why it's giving a little bit of this view from down below. We did that, so that we wouldn't affect all the oak trees, and that was some recommendation too, is instead of removing, a dozen oaks, we want to retain as many as we possibly can. So I think if I scroll up real quickly to landscaping plan or sheet, you will see, I always have the hardest time navigating this PC, sorry. You will see that we are really minimizing the impact on the site plan. Yeah, there it is. So all the original, 100-year-plus oaks are to the north end of the lot, and we've situated the house to be a bit more south and have less impact on the trees. And I think that's probably as much comments as I could make for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did we get any public comment, please?
Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen?
Okay.
Okay, for those attending on Zoom and wish to make oral public comment on this item, please select the raise your hand icon. Staff will call on you, and when we do so, please unmute yourself. So while we're waiting for those on Zoom to tune in, we did receive written correspondence from a Jeff and Bruna Byrne. It was distributed prior to the hearing. Ms. Gu, do you see any hands raised on Zoom for this item?
On Zoom, I do not see any hands raised at all. Thank you.
We do have one speaker slip for an audience member who would like to provide oral public comment for this item, and if anyone else in the audience wishes to do so, please fill out a speaker slip and provide it to us. You can approach the podium, press on the base of the microphone, it will light up green. Please speak into the mic. You will have 2 minutes. Craig Ensley, please.
Okay, thank you so much. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and as the board just went down the list of the 10 items from the July meeting, I guess first the Santiago people had previous commitment, but they asked me to reinforce that they were turning in a comment, which has been done now. And I think the question we had when we were looking at this is the plate height reductions. And first, the home, if you look at it from the east view, east elevation, such as A 2.0, it has 3 sections of roofing. And the upper section and the lower section seem not to have had the roof line changed. The middle section did decline about 1.5 feet, maybe a little bit more than that, which my wife and I really appreciate because that helps our view towards the west. But that does not really impact, it's not visible from lower Las Tunas. There, the lower Las Tunas is primarily impacted by the height of the main floor, I believe it's called, and then the windows for the northernmost exposure. And at least maybe I'm confused because I'm not an architect, but it looks to us that the roof height on the upper northmost section and the southmost section were unchanged. And so relative to the July comments of the board, there may have been changes in the plate height interior, but they did not result in reductions in the roof height, and that's what the Santiago people are coming back about. They would like to see the roof reduced, especially on the south portion. and potentially on the north portion too, because there's a big window that faces them. That was really the reduction of 2 floors, the main floor and the lower floor, 2 feet each in plate height would be 4 feet.
Okay.
And
could wrap up your-
that was our
Sure.
understanding. One last comment, I'm wrapping
All
up.
right.
The house has lots of decks, and I think Mr. Williamson mentioned they had, inconsistent with your input, had reduced one of the decks by 5 feet. I believe, again, as I read the drawings, the southernmost deck is still approximately between 13 and 14 feet wide. So
Okay.
I might be reading the drawings wrong, but I didn't see that.
All right, we'll look at
That's-
that. All right,
so-
thank you.
Any other members attending wish to make public comment? Seeing none, we can close public comment and turn it back to you, Chair Miller.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any questions, please?
I think there were 2 comments that I didn't hear you address, so I figured I'd follow up on those. Have you removed the palms, the proposed palms from the project?
Yes.
Okay. And were you able to have any sun shading studies done for the south and the east elevations?
Yeah, they're on a sheet, let's see. Yeah, right there.
Okay. It's not quite what we're looking for, but these are in fact sun shading. Okay. Let's see. So in follow-up to the speaker's comments, can you clearly articulate for us which plates and/or roofs have been reduced in height, so we're all very clear on that, please?
Yep. Yeah. So again.
Perhaps you could just point it with your
Yeah, the
cursor on
east-
the elevations?
East elevation here, this one in the middle. No, this is the east elevation. This is the view that Ensleys, who are here, will look at our house from, and as you can see, we are almost subterranean. We have lowered that main floor plate.
Can you point with your cursor, please?
Right
Thank you.
here, this long, that's the first floor, and then it goes down 2 floors to this, 2 steps to this floor. This roof, or top plate, and this top plate is 10 feet. This is a clear story glass you can see on the west elevation over here to get light in. But from Santiago, they don't see that. That's at the back of the property. The Santiago people will look at this view, and that is the cantilever that we brought back quite substantially. The deck we've brought back 5 feet, and that was the concern from the last meeting.
Okay, so the only roof that has been reduced is the one that you're
Main
noting
floor.
is at 113
Yep.
or 111 foot 3 or something? I'm trying to read that number.
Yeah, it's down to 10 feet, the top plate. This with the clear store, the entry foyer with the lighting is 14 feet. That extra 2 feet is the glass. But again, we're below the Ensleys' home and their view to the west. That was the elevation I wanted to share.
Okay. And do you have a landscape plan?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you just articulate what I'll call them the pink symbols and the sort of lime green symbols reflect?
Yep. Bree, you might have to help me out on these. So we're planning this pink one.
Yeah, that's the red bud.
And those are, I believe,
To hide the pool wall.
the pool wall.
Yeah.
And then those green, bigger ones are the snow flurry.
Yeah, that lilac.
The lilac, California lilac.
Okay.
And then the purple sage is lining the parking area up by the driveway, and then we're kind of interspersing that down below the pool, I believe, as well. And then the trees, we've got some citrus trees below the pool. And then it's just the oaks that we're planting.
Okay. And then, I guess the last question I have, and I know we talked about this a little bit in the last meeting, which was the concern about the lantern effect possibly from all of the windows. And I think you had talked about the type of lighting that was going to be used. But I guess I'm just trying to understand how you would propose,
Yeah, and
you
we're
know,
open-
for that to be managed.
So I have a friend who's an architect down south who has done projects where there was a concern of reflection. We're open to doing like, I guess we call it a low E type of glazing, if that would help. We're very much daytime people. We're not nighttime people, so if there's a way we can have less interior lighting, we're open to that too. I think we just want the natural beauty of the surroundings to be seen from inside the house during the daytime. So we're happy to commit to, I guess, lower lumen lighting if that's possible, feasible.
Okay. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Henderson, do you have any questions, please?
No.
All right, Board Member Eric Kelly, do you have any questions, please?
I do. Can we go to page 8, sheet A2? Oh, right there. And then if we can go to view 1 at the top of the page.
Did I just jump past it?
Yeah.
Aha, there.
Yeah, and can we zoom in to the right of that view? If you can.
Sorry. Guess I can, no, I can't drag. I'm so used to a Mac. There we go. Does that give you the view?
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So I just want to confirm, you mentioned the main floor to be 10 feet all the way through the
Yeah, this is a better view to articulate that. Thank you. Yeah, so you'll see where you come in the entrance, and then you can see the deck line is about 2 feet or 3 feet lower. There's stairs inside. I could show the floor plan, but consistently it's a 10-foot roof height,
Okay.
ceiling height.
Yeah, excuse me, I was a little thrown off by the numbers on the right. The lower floor is also 10 feet as well?
No, the lower floor is higher, but that's because the house is extending down the hill. So in other words, we're meeting the needs of the top floor. We have a pool that was lower because of the retaining wall. That was the feedback we got in the first meeting. We tried to lower that. So then you're left with this kind of gap in between where I think it's a 13-foot plate height. Yeah, I can see it. You can read it there, 13. Main floor of that lower level, the basement level to the top plate.
Okay, basement 13 feet, okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have for now, thank you.
Okay, Board Member Klein.
Just one, if you could go to the landscape plan and just point out the oak symbol really quick
Okay.
on the landscape plan. The new oaks.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so they are this lighter green symbol. And then Holly made us make a correction. You'll see a couple that are bigger. Those are the larger, I think we identify them down below. The larger sized, I think the arborist had recommended 3 of the biggest size, 2 of the medium, and then it was like 11 of the small.
Perfect. That's, yeah, exactly what I wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Do you have a Google map of this adjacent homes? Or like a kind of, are the photos?
They're,
Of the neighborhood? It's on the next tab over up at the top. It says
Photos.
94 photos.
There you go. Okay, those are.
This was more when you all were asking about the architectural style, and it is a pretty eclectic
Yeah.
neighborhood.
I was just curious to see where the footprints were of the adjacent homes.
In relation to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one, the Santiago neighborhood's down here to the right, down below. I know there's two projects, us and the Synots. I think you guys gave approval to our neighbors project recently. They're more in line with the Santiago neighborhood. We're a bit more to the north up the hill. And so if I can comment on the Santiago neighborhood briefly, and I try not to make this negative. Their views to our house are the back of their homes. If you all were to walk up Las Tunas, you'll see small windows on the backs of their homes. It's like their bathroom windows. And we actually were invited into one of the Santiago houses. And she showed us that, it was her bedroom window. So we're trying to be respectful for all the neighbors. If they were situated with verandas and big decks looking towards our house, I could see their complaint a bit, but we're all looking down the canyon. So, in fact, a lot of the neighbors in up at Las Tunas were upset when the Santiago development happened, because it was, I think you guys had asked me, their FARs are well
Yeah.
north of 100.
I guess my question, what I'm puzzled as, I'm just kind of seeing how the footprint of your house is with the street and all the other, is there some way you can pull up a Google map and see if you can just kind of, that'd be great.
So can you, does this help at all? This?
No, well, actually, Google's a pretty amazing.
Yeah.
right? And she can pull it up.
Okay.
Perfect. And that'll kind of help you kind of see what's going on.
While she's doing that, I can scroll down. You can see Las Tunas wraps around the lot.
Okay.
And you can see our 30-foot setback. So we're in that building
Where are the decks?
here on the
Over there, okay.
south side, looking down the canyon.
Got it. Aha, look at this.
Yeah.
Oh, how
So
come
the-
it's not here?
So the ear, you can kind of see the ear shape on the left
Oh,
of
so
Las
that's your
Tunas. That's our property.
So you're building, okay, got it.
So we're parallel to,
Oh.
we're in the same alignment as 2055. It's the
Okay.
Ensleys.
All right, great, that really helps me, and so that, okay.
And if you were to scroll down just real quick, or that way, yeah, now push up. There's the Santiago down below you.
Oh, I see.
And right where your cursor is right now, that last house in Santiago, they're the ones who wrote the letter this morning, and I just feel like it's so far from where we're building.
Oh, there's some nice homes up there.
We're all looking down the canyon towards the ocean.
Okay, got it. All right, that answered my question, so I'll bring it back for comments. Board Vice Chair Colossus, do you have any comments, please?
Yeah, if we could go back to the landscape plan for a minute, please. I think I was the one who had mentioned trying to put some native plantings up against the retainer for the pool. And the general intent or thought behind those comments was to try to create sort of a more native feeling shrub line against that. And so the way that it's proposed, I feel, is more structural rather than organic. And so it would be nice if we saw some maybe more interspersion of those different plants, and if they were maybe more organically placed. Part of that's just going to happen during installation, I understand, but they're just reading very sort of linear and rectilinear right now. In terms of the elevations, could we take a look at I guess it's the south elevation? It would be down on the sheet. Maybe it's the west elevation, actually. I'd like to look at the east and the west elevation.
Okay. So there's the west up top and the east there in the bottom.
So your lower floor is completely subterranean relative to the east elevation and the north elevation, is that right? Right. Okay. And then what you call the main level, which is where the roof wraps the chimney stack, that pops up out of the terrain, right? And then there's sort of this step in the roof on the east side at some point where it steps up a tick.
I like to think of it as a stepping down, yeah.
Okay, down, up, yeah. So, I guess what I'm grappling with here is when I heard you present, you said, okay, we lowered this, and then we lowered the pool based on comments, and it left this, and so that's what it is. And my question is, well, why didn't we lower this, drop this because it's all subterranean anyhow, and down to 10 feet, and then still lower that main level to 10 feet, which would have ushered in a 2-foot additional drop on that main level overall. If
Can I comment on that one real quick? Or,
if there was more exposure on the east side and that would have caused problems, I could have understood the solution in front of us. But because that lower area is completely subterranean to begin with, and there's very little glazing associated with that mid-level above grade, I'm not understanding what's driving that unless it's just the change in elevation interior to the home that's causing issues for you. So I'm trying to understand
Sure,
that.
I fully understood. If we were to lower both the main floor and the basement floor even further, those windows on that east elevation would be below terrain.
I'm suggesting that you simply lower the plate height of the lower level, which would drop the floor of the main level.
Okay.
And it would also in turn drop the roof of the main level by that same amount.
But wouldn't that bring those windows below grade on the east elevation?
Oh,
I'd be below dirt.
Oh, over here?
Right here. These windows, if we drop this plate, is what I think I heard you say, down, another, and then we brought all this down again, aren't I now below, we will be
Yeah, you
completely
would
subterranean
you
on
would-
the east elevation.
Well, you would lose that one window, and you would lose the lower level of the tall window. But that's my point, is there's not much glazing there that you'd be losing. If there was more significant amount of glazing on that side, I'd probably wouldn't be asking the question.
Can I ask, like, if we all were to step outside and look at the Hillside Riviera right now, we'd see a whole bunch of houses that have 2 stories that we're looking at. What is the concern about this elevation, this west elevation? I feel like we are in compliance with, and we've really studied the Santa Barbara City Design Guidelines and the Hillside Design District. I've buried this house. Each time we come back, we keep burying it. And
Yeah, do you have a comment or?
yeah,
I think we've talked about the project next door, and they really did try to be respectful of the ridge line. And I feel like the degree to which you can get this step down to the greatest degree possible is going to help it, especially because this is viewed. It's going to be viewed so frequently from below.
and this dotted line up here is height restrictions. We're well below it.
I understand. That's my question, that's my comment.
Okay.
I'd
Okay.
prefer to see that 13-foot plate height on the lower level dropped and the main level of the residence dropped accordingly. That's
Okay,
my comment.
all right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
I must recuse, is that how you say, recuse myself because I didn't watch the video.
Yes. You're welcome to make do questions, but not
Are
comments.
we at questions? I got lost.
Comments,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Board Member Eric Kelling, do you have any questions? Comments, please.
I do. I was looking at item 2 of the motion about, that was made about lowering the plate heights, and, I'm seeing the lower floor, you mentioned, was at 13 feet. I believe it needs to be at 10. No more than 10. I understand this is a challenging topography. I'm very appreciative of you two being here, the owners, and this is a lengthy process. This is you mentioned our 3rd meeting, but this is a very visible hillside house, and appreciate what you're doing with us so far. But in terms of the lower floor, I believe it should not exceed 10. I'm not sure what the consequences will be to the east elevation, but I'm per our guidelines on heights in the single family design guidelines, I would be pretty firm on the 10. And then in terms of item 3 on the motion, you mentioned, so I'm looking at the steel post here on view 1 of A2 right here. I'm not sure if that sufficiently addresses what was worded in the motion, adding this post. I understand your intention to try to not create a huge amount of mass, but I believe that, I cannot make any recommendations, but I would just ask for you to study other avenues, and rather than just adding one post, and that would kind of address, that issue with projection from street view. Other than that, I do appreciate the sand tone plaster color. Do believe that really helps in blending it with the hillside, along with the use of the stone. So, thank you. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, Board Member Klein, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I believe you've responded to all of our comments appropriately as far as materials, working with the topography of the site, responding to the landscape. I would agree, you can make things a little more organic. That's really easy change. Like 2 shrubs, a tree, a shrub, 2 shrub, just mixing it a little bit. But overall, you're below, the maximum height, and it's a large site. The FAR is appropriate, and I appreciate all of your edits you've made.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Board Member Klein. I don't sense, I get the plate heights, but in this particular case, 13 is high, but you are bearing half the building into the side of the wall, and that's why I asked for the Google map, because I want to understand how you're placing it. I'm thinking even if you drop the plate heights because of this configuration, you're not gaining much, other than, I don't get that the size, bulk, and scale gets impacted that much if you lowered the plates in this particular case. A lot of times I think it does, but in this case, it would, but I could buy the plate heights at this stage. So I'm pretty comfortable with the elevations, the way you have it. I think you have put a great deal of work and effort in making it compatible. What is the material of the garage doors? I'm just curious. Was that going to be translucent too, or? It kind of seems redundant to ask, considering all the glass.
Wood.
You were going to do wood?
It's not reflected, yeah, like a horizontal, eBay kind of look.
Okay.
Kind of like the eaves.
Okay. Well, if someone, let's see, they're here for project design approval. So if someone, we can either grant that or have them come back. So would someone like to entertain a motion?
I was going to.
Or decline?
Yeah, if I were to make a motion, I would ask for, I'd ask to make a straw vote on one particular topic.
Oh, the plate height?
Yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So yeah, would like to make a straw vote on whether the board believes the plate height needs to be lowered to 10 feet. Lower level, yes.
Raise your hands. Who feels?
I can do a yes or no.
Yeah, please.
The plate height on the lower floor to be lowered from 13 feet to 10 feet. Chair Miller?
No.
Okay. Vice Chair Kalas? Yes. Okay. Board Member Killian?
Yes.
And Board Member Klein?
No.
Okay. And Board Member Anderson, I believe that you cannot vote. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a tie,
Can we
2
split the
yeses and
difference?
2 noes.
Maybe that's a solution. I'm happy that,
Do you want to offer that up?
Yeah.
we bring it to 12 feet.
Oh,
The condition of 12 feet?
May I make a suggestion to the board? That's nice of the applicant to offer that. I just want to remind the board that the project has been deemed complete. They have been in process for a long time now. So we need an action by early January
Yeah,
to
this
be
is-
in accordance with the Permit Streamline Act.
I think we're splitting hairs here in terms of plate height. That's my opinion, so, to be honest.
We're happy to drop it to 12 if that would make everyone.
Can I make a motion?
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion for project design approval with the condition of the first floor being at a plate height of 12 feet to come back for consent, and I'd like to make the following findings. That the project is consistent in appearance with the scenic character of the neighborhood as far as materials such as sandstone is compatible in size, bulk, and scale, as the applicant has sunk in to work with the topography of the site. Quality architectural materials are being used. Trees, an arborist has looked at all the trees, and appropriate mitigation is being implemented, as well as new trees. The public health, safety, and welfare are appropriately protected. The good neighbor guidelines regarding privacy, landscaping, noise, and lighting. The lighting is very minimal and follows the dark sky ordinance. No public views are being impacted. And as mentioned, the architecture works within the natural topography of the site and works with the natural appearance of the ridgeline, as well as the building scale maintains a scale and form that blends within the hillside. As mentioned multiple times, they have sunk in the majority, a good portion of the architecture.
Do I have a second? If I don't get a second, then we're gonna have to reject the motion and go, can I second it?
Yes.
All right, I second it.
Here we go. Chair Miller?
Yes?
Okay. Vice Chair Kalas?
Yes.
Board Member Klein?
Yes.
Board Member Killian?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Abstain?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair Miller, if you could announce the 10-day appeal, please.
Oh, and there's a 10-day appeal period for this project. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All
Thank you.
right, you're welcome. All right, I believe that's the last item on the agenda, so that I will conclude.
We still have to bring up the last item, so I can officially postpone it, please.
Okay, so the last item was scheduled, 2731 El Prado Road was postponed to another time. Do I say on the record what that time is? It's been rescheduled to November 7th. All right, thank you, and have a good night.